So there I was, sitting on top of a cart full of trade goods, chewing on a piece of straw like some kind of countryside philosopher, arguing with a bunch of mercenaries about my love life. You ran away because you slept with someone's wife? They kept asking. Excuse me. It's called a strategic relocation. And it wasn't just someone's wife. It was Lady Elizabeth Gia. We were in love. True, beautiful, poetic love. You peasants wouldn't understand. There were moonlit balls, sworn oaths, the whole romantic package. They laughed. Everyone always laughs. Nobody respects a man of culture around here. Let me back up a little. About 10 years ago, I was just a regular guy pulling an all-nighter, playing Rise of Empires 8 on my laptop, running around the map with my maxed-out character looking for stat boosts. Then I passed out from exhaustion and woke up. Here, different world. Swords, magic, monsters, the whole fantasy starter pack. I landed in the body of some poor kid whose merchant father got killed by bandits and whose mother died of heartbreak right after. 2 dead parents, 1 unconscious orphan, and then, surprise, me, a guy from another dimension, moved right in. Sorry, kid. Hope you don't mind. I brought a gift, though, a whole video game system stuck in my brain. Every time I fight someone, I get experience points. Like a walking, talking RPG character. Oh, and I got Zhao Yun starter abilities. Yeah, that Zhao Yun, the legendary warrior. So basically I hit harder, move faster, and look cooler doing it than anyone has a right to. My strength and constitution got permanently boosted. My attack speed is ridiculous. And I've got this thing called Brave that makes my critical hits go off like fireworks at a festival. With powers like that, I climbed my way up fast, beat up every street gang in the neighborhood, smacked around a few knights who got too cocky, became the king of the local arena, and made a pile of gold doing it. Noble families kept begging me to swear loyalty and become a proper knight, but I'm not really the bending the knee type. And then there were the ladies. Turns out, when you're tall, handsome, and you can beat up literally everyone in the city, bored noble wives start paying attention. The former Countess of Colin made me her guardian knight, which sounds very official and honorable until you realize what it actually means. Then there was Miss Adele, Miss Mary, Lady Celia. Let's just say my social calendar got very full very fast. That's how I ended up on this dusty trade road in the middle of nowhere, strategically relocating before some angry husbands caught up with me. And right when I was getting comfortable, beer in hand, sun blocked by my cloak hanging off my sword, somebody screamed, "Enemy attack!" The whole caravan snapped into action. Drivers swung the carts into a big defensive circle like they'd done it 100 times before. Because they probably had. This is the wilds. Everything out here wants to eat you. I grabbed my sword and stood up on the cart to get a look. Way out on the horizon, a scout was riding toward us full speed, and behind him, hundreds of dark shapes charging our way. Gnolls. Big, ugly, 2-meter-tall dog-faced monsters with green-black skin, dirty yellow manes, and the personality of a blender full of bad decisions. They're strong, fast, and mean. And they never come alone. They run in tribes, sometimes hundreds strong. Behind the gnolls came waves of goblins and kobolds, the cannon fodder. Goblins are basically useless. A farmer with a stick could handle 3 of them. But when you've got a few hundred, they become a problem the same way a swarm of mosquitoes becomes a problem. Their boss was this gnoll chieftain named Yegus. Big guy, real proud of himself. Apparently he'd chewed through his own father's throat to take over the tribe, which honestly tells you everything you need to know about gnoll family dinners. He had 30 elite gnoll berserkers. Bigger, meaner, the kind that could flatten a small tribe by themselves. Yegus thought he had this in the bag. I could see it on his ugly dog face. That smug look, like a cat that just cornered a mouse. His plan was simple. Let the goblins and kobolds soften us up, then send in the big boys to finish the job. But me? I was looking at that horde of monsters and seeing something completely different. Experience points. Hundreds and hundreds of beautiful, walking, growling experience points, just waiting to be collected. I gripped my sword and grinned. This was going to be fun. Now, let me tell you how I ended up on this road in the first place. So remember those noble ladies I mentioned? Well, turns out juggling multiple secret romances works great, right up until it doesn't. There was this masquerade ball, right? Very fancy, very private. I was having let's call it a passionate debate with the Countess and a few other lovely ladies, when things got a little out of hand and somebody saw something they shouldn't have. The new Count of Colin, technically my stepson, if you squint hard enough, lost his mind. Ordered his knights to arrest me. Wanted me dead. So what did I do? I went to talk it out. Peacefully. Like a gentleman. One dark night, I snuck into his heavily guarded Thorn Castle, alone, and had a nice little chat with about 30 knights along the way. By chat, I mean I beat the living daylights out of every single one of them. Then I sat down with my dear son, and we reached a very friendly agreement. I leave town, he stops trying to kill me. Everybody wins. Mostly me. I said my tearful goodbyes to all the ladies, bought myself a fake noble title with their help, grabbed my savings, and headed north with a trade caravan. And that's when this Gnoll army showed up. Charge. R.I.P. them apart. The goblins and kobolds came screaming toward us like a green and brown tidal wave of stupidity. Our side had maybe 70 people total, half of them actual fighters. The archers let loose. All 20-something arrows. Real intimidating. But credit where it's due, the guards knew what they were doing. They plugged the gaps between the carts and started skewering goblins with spears like it was a kebab stand. Me? I found a nice long spear in the cart and went to work from up top. My spear moved so fast it left afterimages. Every swing painted a red line across goblin throats. It was like mowing the lawn, except the grass screamed. The gnolls hung back and watched their little minions die by the hundreds. Classic boss move, let the interns handle it first. After about 15 minutes, the ground in front of our carts was literally piled with bodies. We'd lost 2 guys who got pulled off the carts and, yeah, let's not talk about what happened to them. The goblins and kobolds were on the edge of total panic. Then Ygis stepped forward. One big roar, and 100 gnolls charged. The mood in our camp changed instantly. My system showed our morale dropping from 80 to 60 in a heartbeat. People went white, hands shaking, weapons wobbling. The guard captain was screaming, "Pick up your weapons or die," which, honestly, is pretty motivating. But I was already moving. I jumped off the cart with my spear and hit the ground running. My flying horse ability kicked in, and suddenly I was a blur. I tore through the remaining goblins and kobolds like a bowling ball through tissue paper. Their freshly recovered morale gone. Instantly. Shattered. Bye-bye. Then I hit the gnoll line. The first gnoll that saw me grinned. All teeth, already imagining biting my throat out. Poor guy. My spear went through him and launched his 7-foot body into the air like a furry javelin. The others didn't even flinch. They just got angrier and came at me with spiked clubs. Bad idea. Spinning cherry blossom. Yeah, I name my moves. Don't judge me. 4 waves of battle energy spiraled off my spinning spear. Every gnoll in range suddenly looked like they'd been thrown into a blender. Cuts everywhere. Bodies flying backward faster than they'd charged forward. The caravan guards were standing on the carts with their jaws on the floor. Is this real? Since when are knights this strong? I mean, I'm not technically a knight, but I appreciate the compliment. In just a few breaths, I dropped over 30 gnolls. Our side's morale shot through the roof. The gnolls' morale tanked. Ygis saw his army getting wrecked and completely lost it. He howled like a broken dog whistle and charged at me with all 30 of his elite berserkers. 30 massive, juiced-up gnolls, all coming straight for me. Did I run? Please. I ran at them. When I was about 12 feet away, I triggered my ultimate. Thunder Lance. My body exploded with power. Bones cracking and popping, muscles swelling. I went from 6'3" to over 7 feet tall in about 2 seconds. Lightning started dancing across my skin, jumping along my spear, crackling in the air around me. The berserkers closest to me froze up, their muscles locking from the static charge. Storm rain, blue lightning wrapped around my spear like a living thing. I spun it, and dozens of thunderballs shot out in every direction like the world's most violent sprinkler system. Everything within 30 feet of me got deep fried. Gnoll berserkers turned into charcoal sculptures, still frozen in mid-charge. And Ygis? The big bad chieftain who'd murdered his own father? He took a lightning ball to the chest and stumbled, badly burned. Before he could even whimper, my spear was already through his throat. Fight over. Boss defeated. Experience points collected. I love this world. After Ygis hit the dirt, the rest of the fight was basically cleanup duty. The goblins and kobolds ran like someone yelled, "Free bath," at a goblin convention. The remaining gnolls saw their boss dead, and their morale evaporated like spit on a hot rock. Did I let them run? Absolutely not. Every single one of those fleeing gnolls had a little green number floating over their head that only I could see. 10 experience points each. You don't let experience points run away. That's like watching money blow out of your wallet and just waving goodbye. I chased down every gnoll I could catch. My flying horse speed boost made me faster than most of them, but even I can't be everywhere at once. A few dozen escaped. Annoying, but whatever. When the dust settled, I looked at the battlefield. 70-something gnoll corpses, plus way more goblins and kobolds. And then, my favorite sound in the world, the system chimed in. Ding. Battle complete. Glorious victory. Enemies killed, 258. Losses, 2. Experience earned, 1,457 plus a 300 bonus. Level up. Oh baby. Level 12. 2 fresh attribute points, 2 skill points, and a silver treasure chest. Christmas came early, and it smells like burnt gnoll. Let me show you what I'm working with now. Strength, 26. Agility, 28. Constitution, 25. Spirit, 19. Your average adult man sits at about 5 or 6 in these stats. Trained soldiers might hit 8 or 9. I'm roughly 5 times stronger than a normal person, but honestly, in a real fight the gap feels way bigger than that. My weapon skills are through the roof. 160 in spears, 156 in swords. I can ride, shoot, and throw things at people with scary accuracy. And then there's the fun stat. Charisma, 18. The system literally tells me I'm so handsome I can make a living off my face alone. Anything above 10 is attractive. I'm almost double that. Discounts at shops, hearts in women's eyes, the whole package. If I had less willpower, I'd have married some rich countess years ago, and this story would be called My Noble Girlfriends, or The Countess Fell for Me. But I have standards. Sort of. Sometimes. My command stat is 60, which means any army I lead fights harder and holds together longer. Normal troops break and run when they lose about 30% of their guys. Under my command, they'll hold until 40 or even 50% casualties. That's not inspiring leadership. That's borderline mind control through sheer charisma and loud yelling. Now, my skills got interesting when they crossed over from the game. In Rise of Empires 8, there was this ability called Repeating Crossbow that summoned 2 crossbow carts to bombard enemies. In real life, it turned into actual engineering knowledge. I literally know how to build a crossbow siege engine from scratch. I made one once. The thing could punch through knight armor at 100 meters and pinned a mountain bear to the ground like a bug on a board. Sounds amazing, right? Well, it fires once every 5 minutes, moves slower than a grandma on a Sunday walk, can't hit anything past 100 meters, and costs 300 gold nars to build. I took it apart and sold the pieces. Sometimes the coolest toys are the least practical. After the battle, the caravan started cleaning up, collecting loot, patching wounds, the usual. I walked back to my cart with my spear, feeling pretty satisfied. A little tired, but not a scratch on me. That's when the caravan manager came scurrying over with the biggest fake smile I've ever seen. Sir Su Luin, thank you for your selfless assistance. Selfless? Selfless? I threw my arm around his shoulder and pulled him close. Listen, friend. There was nothing selfless about what I just did. He blinked at me like a confused puppy. What? I saved your entire caravan. You're alive. Your goods are safe. Your people still have all their limbs, mostly. You're really not going to pay me for that? His face went through about 7 emotions in 2 seconds. See, in this world, nobles are supposed to be brave, honorable, and generous. They're supposed to help people out of the goodness of their noble hearts, especially the down-on-their-luck nobles who cling to their dignity like it's all they have left. I am not that kind of noble. He looked at me. He looked at the battlefield covered in dead monsters. He looked back at me and my big, shameless grin. Then he sighed the deepest sigh I've ever heard from a man who still had his head attached to his body, reached into his coat, and pulled out a coin purse. I snatched it out of his hand and bounced it in my palm. Heavy. The beautiful clinking sound of gold nars bumping together. 50 coins at least. Pleasure doing business, I said, slapping him on the back. Next time monsters show up, you can count on me. Same rates apply. The look on his face told me he was thinking one very specific thought. No wonder this guy became a noble. With that kind of shamelessness, he could become emperor. And honestly, He's not wrong. The mercenaries cleaned up the battlefield fast. Nobody bothered burying the monster corpses. Out here in the wilds, hyenas and wild dogs would have them picked clean in 2 days. Heck, even other goblins and gnolls would come back and snack on their dead buddies. Nature's recycling program. Disgusting but efficient. Those 2 poor guys who got dragged off the carts? When they found them, let's just say there wasn't much left to find. They burned what remained and collected the ashes. That's the wilds for you. 0 stars on every travel review. As for loot, these monsters were broke. Most of them were fighting with wooden sticks. The gnolls had some metal weapons, but the only thing those were good for was melting down. And the clothes they found. Nobody even wanted to figure out what color they used to be. Straight into the fire. After the cleanup, the caravan got moving again, but things got weird. All those mercenaries who'd been joking around with me before, suddenly very quiet, very polite. Lots of respectful glances toward my cart. Funny how killing 258 monsters in one afternoon changes people's attitude toward you. I didn't care. I was busy with something way more important, checking my loot. I left my 2 new attribute points unspent. My body's already stronger than a knight commander's, no rush there. I had 2 skill points burning a hole in my pocket, but those could wait a minute. First things first, I opened my system inventory. My inventory isn't huge, about 1 cubic meter of magical storage space. Inside, 6,000 gold nars, my life savings, 2 shiny new steel ingots from the battle, and 1 beautiful silver treasure chest. The steel ingots were system-grade refined steel, way better than anything a regular blacksmith could make. My current weapons are made with regular iron mixed with just a little bit of this stuff, and they survived a gnoll massacre without a scratch. 2 full ingots could make several top-quality weapons. Nice. But forget the steel. Chest time. The system has 5 chest tiers: black iron, bronze, silver, gold, and purple gold. The best I'd ever gotten before was bronze. This was my first silver. My hands were literally shaking. I mentally clicked, open. Budget special effects exploded across my vision. We're talking 5-cent budget sparkles here. And inside sat a piece of armor. Beast face iron armor. Forged from 100 times refined steel, tough but lightweight. Defense 15. Special effect, rigid body, reduces incoming damage. Level requirement, 12. I was exactly level 12. This armor basically meant that regular attacks would just bounce off me. Those gnolls from earlier? I could stand still and let them wail on me, and they probably couldn't break through. It's like getting a cheat code on top of my existing cheat codes. Learning special traits normally costs skill points, expensive ones too. I came to this world with 3 innate talents, but could only use 1 at first. Had to spend points to unlock the others. Getting rigid body for free from a chest? That's like finding a $100 bill in your laundry. With my remaining skill points, I spent 1 on a healing spell called Life Remedy. Nothing fancy, quick cast, restores a small amount of health. The upgrade costs 2 points, so that'll have to wait. After the gnoll massacre, the rest of the journey was peaceful. Suspiciously peaceful. Turns out when you single-handedly annihilate an entire raiding party, word travels fast even among monsters. Every bandit crew in the area apparently took 1 look at our caravan and collectively decided, nope, not that one. Great for survival. Terrible for my experience grind. Without enemies to fight, I was back to basic training for XP. Do you know how slow that is? We're talking years per level slow. Back in Collin City, at least I had arena fights and street thugs to beat up. Out here, nothing. I was so bored I started reading a trashy knight romance novel that was popular back in Collin. 3. Agonizing. Days. Then, on the horizon, a dark line. As we got closer, it grew taller and wider until it became unmistakable: city walls. The entire caravan lit up like kids seeing a candy store. After 2 weeks in the wilderness, even a pile of rocks with a roof would have gotten a standing ovation. But this was no pile of rocks. This was Cult City, the crown jewel of the northern province. Originally built centuries ago as a fortress against barbarian and orc invasions, the city had since grown into the biggest trade hub in the north. But you could still see its military bones everywhere. The walls were over 30 feet tall, solid stone, with watchtowers jutting out every few meters. Those towers turned the whole wall into a star-shaped fortress. Any army trying to climb up would get stabbed from 3 directions at once. The moat wasn't some dinky little ditch either. They'd literally rerouted an entire river around the city. To take this place by force, you'd need 100,000 soldiers and about a year and a half of patience. As we got closer, I could see the scars on the walls. Old battle damage, never fully repaired, like the city was proud of its war stories. Flags with crossed swords and shields fluttered on top, the banner of House Savoy, Lords of Cult City. They're one of the 4 great marquis families of the Florence Kingdom, and technically they have a claim to the throne. Then again, so does about 1/5 of every noble family in the kingdom, so that's not exactly exclusive. The road smoothed out, traffic picked up, and I started seeing merchants from everywhere. Furs from the north, gems from Loren Kingdom, dwarven ironwork, and from the Desert Kingdom. Well, dates and other exotic goods. Everything flowed through Cult City. The tax revenue alone must be staggering. At the gate, 2 squads of guards in polished armor stood like statues with sharp spears, silently reminding everyone that this city doesn't mess around. An alarm bell hung above the gate. 1 ring and reinforcements show up in 15 minutes. We paid the entry tax, got our papers stamped, and rolled through the gates. New city. Fresh start. 6,000 gold in my pocket, a shiny new armor in my inventory, and absolutely 0 angry husbands looking for me. Life was good. Once inside Cult City, I ditched the caravan and headed straight for a tavern. Not a fancy one. I'm not that kind of noble. The kind where the air smells like beer, sweat, and questionable life choices. I pushed open the door and got hit with a wall of noise and ale fumes. The place was packed with mercenaries, drinking, gambling, arguing, and getting yelled at by barmaids who could probably beat half of them in a fight. I flipped a silver NAR to the bartender. Beer. Food. Whatever's good. His eyes lit up when he caught the coin. Roast lamb chops, mushroom potato beef stew, or pork pie. All house specials. Lamb chops. Bill. Where are you? You useless. Get this gentleman his lamb chops. The food arrived fast and tasted incredible. After 2 weeks of campfire garbage, a properly cooked lamb chop was basically a religious experience. I inhaled it like a starving wolf, washed it down with beer, and leaned back to eavesdrop on everyone's conversations. Mercenary taverns are basically free newspapers. 90% of what they say is nonsense, but that other 10% is gold. Here's what I picked up about local prices. A regular iron axe costs 1 silver NAR. A military-grade sword, 100 times forged steel, no enchantments, runs about 10 gold NARs. A half-body chainmail suit, 70 gold. That's 3 years of savings for a normal family. A house in the outer district costs 100 gold. Full plate armor? 4 to 500 gold NARs. Only knights can afford that, and most of them are wearing their grandfather's set. So next time you see a knight in ancestral armor and think it's about family honor and proud tradition, nah, he's just broke. Can't afford a new one. With my 6,000 gold, I could fully equip about 50 soldiers. Or I could recruit 500 militia guys, hand them each a pointy stick and a leather vest, and pray really hard. Of course, those 50 proper soldiers would steamroll the 500 militia in about 30 seconds, so quality matters. But I wasn't here to build an army. Not yet anyway. I was here because I want land. My own territory. A title. A place where I'm the boss. Now, in this world, there are basically 5 ways to get a noble title and land. Let me walk you through them, because I've thought about this a lot. Option 1. Be born right. Have a rich, noble dad. Be the firstborn son. Inherit everything when he dies. Simple, elegant, impossible to do retroactively. Unless someone invents a time machine. This one's off the table. Option 2. Join the army. Fight in wars. Don't die. Rack up enough achievements. And maybe the king gives you a little piece of land and calls you a baron. Sounds noble and heroic, right? Here's the problem. The Florence Kingdom has been around for centuries. Almost every piece of good land is already handed out. Even if I fought like a demon and survived, they'd probably give me some tiny forgotten village in the middle of nowhere and call it a reward. With those stingy nobles running things, there's a 99% chance I'd risk my life for a patch of dirt with 3 goats and a broken well. Hard pass. Option 3. Marry rich. Step 1. Be ridiculously handsome. Check. Step 2. Be strong. Check. Step 3. Find a widowed countess with land and a title who's looking for a new husband. Sweep her off her feet. Marry her. Boom. Instant nobility. I actually had a target for this plan back in Collin City. Beautiful widow, great estate, very interested in me. But then the whole, sleeping with the other count's wife, situation blew up and I had to flee. So, goodbye, my dear countess. Another love lost to my lifestyle. Option 4. Swear loyalty to a big noble. Become a knight, get a nice little estate, serve faithfully forever. Sounds okay until you realize, forever means forever. Not just me, my kids, their kids, their kids' kids. Every single descendant who inherits my title becomes this noble servant. That's not selling yourself. That's selling your entire family tree until the end of time. Absolutely not. I didn't cross dimensions to become somebody's eternal employee. Option 5. The Frontier Charter. Go to the Noble Council, buy a charter, take your people into the wilds, and carve out your own territory. If you survive, the land is yours, and it can be way bigger than what any other method gives you. The catch? The wilds aren't just gnolls and goblins. Out there you've got trolls, ogres, magical beasts, lizard men, orcs, barbarian tribes, and, oh yeah, dragons. One bad day and your brand new settlement becomes a monster buffet, and all your investment goes up in smoke. Possibly along with you. High risk, high reward. My kind of deal. Options 1 through 4 were all either impossible, humiliating, or boring. So option 5 it was. The Frontier Charter. I grabbed my noble badge, strapped on my sword, and headed out. The streets near the tavern were muddy, typical lower district, so I found a nice sharp-edged rock on the curb and scraped the muck off my boots. Gotta look presentable. I was heading to the Noble Council building. The Noble Council is basically the kingdom's money machine. They sell frontier charters, honorary noble titles, no land, no power, just a fancy name. But rich merchants eat that stuff up, and other bureaucratic goodies. The profits get split 50-50 between the crown and the local nobles. Everyone gets paid, everyone's happy. Time to go shopping for my future. The Noble Council building wasn't hard to find. It was the third biggest building in the whole city, right next to the Lord's Mansion. And let me tell you, these people did not hold back on the architecture. The whole thing sat on a 3-level stone platform with 12 granite pillars out front, each one thick enough to hide behind. A giant dome on top, carvings of famous heroes on the pillars, historical scenes on the walls, 2 massive bronze statues of legendary knights on horseback flanking the entrance, 15 feet tall, lances pointing forward, horses rearing up, looking like they were about to charge into battle. The kind of craftsmanship that screams, "We have way too much money, and we want you to know it." I jogged up the steps and immediately got stopped by a guard. "Sir, this is the Noble Council. What's your business?" I pulled out my noble badge. "I'm here to buy a frontier charter." He squinted at the badge, checked the markings, decided it was real, and waved me in. "Follow me, sir." Inside, my jaw nearly hit the floor. The main hall was enormous, at least 500 square meters, ceiling over 30 feet high, covered by a perfect half-dome with 0 pillars holding it up. The engineering alone was insane. On the ceiling, a giant mural showed the kingdom's founding war. It was like walking into a cathedral, except instead of worshipping a god, everyone here worshipped money and paperwork. The guard led me past a dozen clerks scurrying around and stopped at a fancy door. I noticed the door was made of ironwood, a material that grows only in the north, hard as steel but a quarter of the weight, takes 50 years to grow a piece this size, and costs a fortune. Most people use it for high-grade shields. These guys used it for an office door. Show-offs. The guard knocked. No answer. He knocked harder. Still nothing. He knocked even harder. "Come in," mumbled a voice that clearly had been unconscious 30 seconds ago. We walked in. Behind a mahogany desk sat a chubby middle-aged nobleman named Julian. Pillow crease on his cheek. Drool on his lip. Crusty stuff in the corner of his eye. This man had been sleeping so hard, he probably didn't know what century it was. "Sir Julian, this gentleman wants to purchase a frontier charter," the guard said. Julian's sleepy eyes popped open. He stared at me like I'd just told him I wanted to buy the moon. "A frontier charter? You?" I couldn't blame him for being shocked. Apparently, these things barely sell, maybe a few per year. And for good reason. The success rate is basically a rounding error. Most nobles who buy one come crawling back with nothing. There are literally 800 abandoned settlements rotting in the wilds right now, each one representing some optimistic idiot's shattered dreams. "Kid," Julian said, not even bothering to wipe the eye crust. Don't blame me for not warning you. Just because you read some night adventure novels doesn't mean frontier life is romantic. There are hundreds of failed settlements out there. I appreciate the warning, sir. I know exactly what I'm doing. Your funeral, he shrugged, pulled a stamped parchment off his bookshelf, scribbled something in fancy calligraphy, and slid it across the desk. Sign here. 500 gold nars. I signed. I dropped a bag of gold on his desk. He weighed it on a scale, confirmed the amount, stamped the charter with an official seal, and handed it over. Good luck, kid. You'll need it. 500 gold. Just like that. One bag of coins for a piece of sheepskin that basically says, congratulations, you now have permission to go die in the wilderness. What a bargain. Next up, building a team. A frontier settlement needs people, soldiers to fight, workers to build, farmers to grow food. I'd need weapons, tools, grain, medicine, and eventually, slaves. Yeah, slaves. I know how that sounds, but here's the thing. Almost no free person in their right mind would voluntarily move to a brand new settlement in monster-infested wilderness. The death rate is terrifying. The only free people who'd even consider it are bankrupt farmers and homeless drifters with absolutely nothing to lose. Everyone else would rather stay in the city and be poor but alive. So the slave market it was. By the time I left the council building, it was getting dark, so I headed back to the tavern and crashed for the night. Next morning, I grabbed a quick breakfast, rented a horse cart for 1 silver in AR, and rode across town to the slave market. Half an hour later, the cart stopped outside a busy marketplace, and I hopped off. The smell hit me before I even walked through the gate. Imagine every bad bathroom you've ever been in, combined, fermented in the sun, and then someone heated it up just to make sure every molecule of stink reached your nose. My eyes were watering before I took 3 steps. The place was exactly as depressing as you'd imagine. Muddy ground, dirty water everywhere, slave traders shouting prices like they were selling fish at a morning market. Behind them, iron cages held rows of skinny, filthy people wearing nothing but rags around their waists. Whip marks on their backs. Dead eyes staring at nothing. The absolute bottom of this world's food chain. Not exactly the army I dreamed of commanding. But every empire starts somewhere, right? The moment I walked into the slave market looking halfway decent, every bottom-tier slave dealer in the place swarmed me like flies on honey. Sir, look at this one. Strong back. Good teeth. I waved them all off. These poor souls could barely stand up straight. If I made them my frontier guard, a pack of goblins would send them running. I needed soldiers, not scarecrows. I pushed deeper into the market. The further in you go, the better the merchandise, and the less it smells like a sewer exploded. The middle section was actually tolerable. Cleanish slaves, properly trained, ready to work. About 3 gold nars each. Good for farming. I made a mental note. Then there were the skilled slaves, blacksmiths, carpenters, craftsmen. 5 to 50 gold, depending on what they could do. Useful. Expensive. Noted. And then, I walked into the tent. Oh boy, the tent. Inside was a lineup of female slaves that hit me like a truck. All arranged in a row, barely wearing anything, looking like a scene straight out of one of those. Art films from my previous life. Prices range from 5 gold to 200 gold for the premium options. My eyes went wide. My wallet started sweating. My brain said, but every other part of me was screaming, just one. Just one 200 gold premium model. No elf girls, though. Apparently, the elves sealed their forest years ago, and nobody's seen one since. Probably for the best. If elf girls were on the market, I'd have gone bankrupt on day 1. I used every ounce of willpower I had, and I mean every ounce, to turn around and walk out of that tent. I did not look back. Looking back would have been fatal to my budget. Then I passed the beast folk section and nearly lost it again. Cat girls, fox girls, fluffy ears, swishy tails. My lifelong dream has been to own a cat ear maid and a foxtail maid. And here they were, right in front of me, looking adorable and affordable. I closed my eyes. I thought about my future territory. I thought about survival. I thought about priorities. I kept walking. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than fighting gnolls. Harder than sneaking into Thorncastle. This was true pain. Moving on to what I actually came for, fighters. The trained barbarian soldiers from the northern tribes. These guys were the real deal. Big, strong, averaging over 6 feet tall, some over 6.5. The harsh northern wilderness had turned them into natural warriors. And the best part? They were surprisingly loyal. See, barbarian tribes all hate each other. Every other tribe is an enemy. So once you buy a barbarian soldier, he has zero loyalty conflicts. Everyone who isn't his new master is fair game. But the price? 35 gold per soldier before equipment. Add a proper weapon, armor, and gear, and you're looking at 150 gold per head. Quick math, with my 5,000 remaining gold, minus what I need for food, tools, and supplies, I could afford maybe 30 fully equipped elite soldiers. 30 guys, to build an entire frontier settlement. In monster-infested wilderness. That's not a plan, that's a suicide note with a budget attached. Then I spotted something interesting. Off to the side, there was a weird group of slaves that nobody was looking at. Most slave groups are either all strong men or all skilled workers. This bunch, it was a whole family package deal, warriors, old people, kids, everyone mixed together. A complete tribal unit. They were berserkers, wild men, a specific type of northern barbarian with a special ability, rage mode. When a berserker goes berserk, they become an unstoppable killing machine. Sounds amazing, right? Here's the catch, and it's a big catch. When they rage, they lose all sense of discipline. Strategy? Gone. Formations? What formations? Friend or foe? What's the difference? They just charge forward and smash everything in their path, including their own teammates. The military tried using them once. Put a squad of berserkers in the front line of a proper army. The berserkers raged, broke formation, and charged straight ahead like bulls seeing red. The entire army's formation collapsed trying to deal with these maniacs. The enemy general saw the chaos, sent cavalry around the side, captured the commanding officer, and won the battle. Meanwhile, the berserkers were still charging forward, completely unaware their side had already lost. After that disaster, nobody wanted berserkers in a real army. The only units that would take them were the suicide squads, troops assigned to do-or-die missions where the only instruction is, run forward and kill stuff until you're dead. Which, honestly, is the one thing berserkers are perfect at. So berserkers became the awkward middle child of the slave market. Too expensive for cannon fodder. Too undisciplined for proper armies. And this group came with grandmas and babies attached. Nobody was touching them with a 10-foot pole. But me? I was grinning. Here's what nobody else seemed to figure out. Frontier warfare isn't organized army combat. There are no neat formations. No coordinated maneuvers. It's messy, chaotic, wild brawling in forests and hills against monsters and tribal raiders who also have zero discipline. In that kind of fight, berserkers are perfect. You can't break formation if there is no formation. You can't disrupt your ally's strategy if the strategy is just kill everything that moves. And the families? That's not a weakness. That's a loyalty guarantee. Give them a home, protect their kids and elders, and these warriors will fight to the death for you. Not because you own them, because you gave them something worth fighting for. Plus, and this was the real reason I was smiling, a group this unwanted was going to be dirt cheap. Time to haggle. Let me tell you about the best deal I ever made. I spotted this slave dealer named Karn standing next to a group of berserker barbarians, looking like a man who'd just realized he bought a boat with a hole in it. And honestly, that's basically what happened to him. See, Karn was a newbie dealer. Last month, some other slave trader was drowning in debt and dumped his entire stock at a discount. Karn saw over 100 barbarian warriors going cheap and thought, jackpot. Strong fighters with families attached. The families make them obedient. I'll sell them to nobles as bodyguards. What Karn didn't know, what everyone except Karn apparently knew, was that nobody buys berserkers as bodyguards. Their rage mode makes them about as controllable as a flaming shopping cart rolling downhill. So there he was, stuck with 126 barbarians who eat like horses, selling 0 of them, watching his money disappear into their stomachs one meal at a time. The poor guy was about 2 weeks away from crawling back to his dad's shop and admitting his big business empire dream was dead. Then I showed up. You selling these? I asked casually. Karn's head snapped toward me so fast, I thought his neck would break. His eyes lit up like a kid seeing candy. Honestly, the desperation in his stare was so intense it gave me chills. Yes, absolutely. You want to buy slaves? SIR, you have excellent taste. He was practically vibrating. These are the finest warriors in the entire market. Only 10 gold nars each. You won't find a better price anywhere. 10 gold each? For berserkers that nobody wants? This guy was trying to rob me in broad daylight. I gave him my best. Are you serious right now? Look. 10 gold? Did you wake up this morning and decide I look stupid? These are berserkers. Nobody wants them. You might as well be selling me angry furniture. I turned to walk away. Now, here's a negotiation tip from Uncle Suluan. When the seller is more desperate than you are, always walk away. Always. Even if you want the product badly. Especially if you want it badly. Karn grabbed my arm like a drowning man grabbing a rope. Wait, sir. The price is negotiable. Don't leave. Why would I stay? So you can scam me? 7 gold. 7 gold each? I stopped struggling. 7's more reasonable. But I only want the adult warriors. Keep the old folks and kids. Karn's face twisted. Sir, the families come with the warriors. Without their families, these men won't cooperate. They need. What am I supposed to do with grandmas and toddlers? I don't have enough food for them. If you're forcing a package deal, then forget it. I pulled away again. 6 gold each. Karn's eyes were closed. He looked like someone pulling off a bandage. But the families stay with the warriors. All of them. Together. Deal. Huh, he froze. I don't think he expected me to agree that fast. The truth is, I always wanted the families. That was the whole point. Warriors with families to protect are warriors who fight to the death. But Karn didn't need to know that. Before he could rethink anything, I whipped out my money bag and started counting. 126 people at 6 gold each, 756 gold. Here, count it. I tossed him the bag. Heavy. Final. No takebacks. Karn caught it, felt the weight, and I watched his soul leave his body a little. He'd bought these slaves at 10 gold each, plus a month of feeding 126 giant barbarians, plus the cost of renting market space. He'd lost at least 700 gold on this deal. But what could he do? He needed the cash more than he needed to feel good about himself. We signed the contracts, he handed over the slave papers, and just like that, I was the proud owner of 126 barbarians. Karn tried to comfort himself as I left. I could practically hear him thinking, it's fine. I still have 700 gold. I'll rebuild. The Karn business empire will rise again. Sure it will, buddy. Sure it will. Now I needed somewhere to put my new small army. I couldn't just march them through the streets like a parade. Fortunately, being a noble, even a fake one, has perks. I went to City Hall and bought an abandoned military camp on the edge of town. The place was ancient, at least 100 years old, from back when Cult City was actually on the front lines and needed huge garrisons. The city had expanded since then, the army moved on, and most old camps got torn down for new buildings. This one survived purely because it was in such a terrible location that nobody bothered demolishing it. And it showed. Half the roofs had caved in. Walls were crumbling. The whole place looked like it was one strong breeze away from becoming a pile of historical rubble. But the bones were solid. Whoever built it a century ago hadn't cut corners. The main structures were sound, the area was big enough, and all it really needed was some roof repairs. I hired some craftsmen, bought materials, and set them to work. While the repairs were happening, I headed to the training yard to have a little chat with my new employees. This is where things got interesting. Barbarians are called barbarians for a reason. These people averaged about 7 feet tall. 7 feet. Every single adult male was a walking mountain of muscle. I'm 6'3" and built like a fighter, and standing in front of these guys I felt like a middle schooler at a bodybuilding competition. 126 of them stood in the yard, staring at me with cold, flat eyes. They didn't look scared. They didn't look respectful. They didn't look like slaves who'd just been bought. They looked like wolves sizing up a new zookeeper, quietly deciding whether he was worth listening to or eating. This was going to be a fun conversation. Here's the thing about barbarians. They're simple people. Not stupid, just straightforward. You want their respect? Beat them in a fight. You want them to like you? Drink with them. No politics, no scheming, no backstabbing. Refreshing, honestly. After dealing with noble ladies and their jealous husbands, hanging out with 7-foot killing machines felt like a vacation. I held up the slave contracts and got right to it. So, I bought you. You're mine now. Dead silence. 126 pairs of cold eyes staring at me. Nobody clapped. Shocking. You should thank me, actually. If I hadn't bought you, your next stop was the Suicide Squad. That's when he walked out. The biggest barbarian in the group pushed through the crowd and stood right in front of me. 2 meters 20. 7 feet 2 inches of solid muscle wrapped in scarred skin, moving with the grace of a jungle cat despite being the size of a refrigerator. Standing next to him, I looked like a malnourished child. I casually took 2 steps backward. Not because I was intimidated. I just didn't want to strain my neck looking up. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. So you bought us to be cannon fodder too? He rumbled. If I wanted cannon fodder, why would I buy your grandmas and kids? They're terrible at dying in battle. Maybe you'll use them to threaten us into being cannon fodder. Fair point. Smart guy. Look, I said, spreading my hands. I'm not military. I'm a noble with a frontier charter. I need warriors to help me build a territory in the wilds. That's it. And here's the deal. Once the territory is established, I'll free every single one of you. Full citizen status. No more slavery. Sounds nice. Why should we believe you? Because you have 0 other options. I smiled warmly. But I'll sweeten it. Your families stay here in Cult City, the safest city in the north. I'll pay for their food every month. You can send someone back to check on them anytime. Your families are safe, comfortable, and fed. You come with me and build something worth living for. I could see the gears turning behind those cold eyes. He knew this was the best deal they were going to get. The families stay somewhere safe, which also meant they couldn't just run off into the wilds the moment I turned my back. Both sides had insurance. Everybody wins. We agree. His face cracked into something that was technically a smile, but looked more like a bear trying to be friendly. I'm Johnson, from the Storm Bear tribe. A pause. It doesn't exist anymore. I'm Sulun. Nice to meet you, Johnson. Now get your people to clean up this dump. 100 barbarians descended on that crumbling military camp like a cleaning tornado. And let me tell you, barbarian women are not what you'd call delicate. I watched a barbarian lady pick up a pile of debris that weighed at least 200 pounds and carry it away one-handed while chatting with her friend. Their children were hauling loads that would break a grown man from Florence. By evening, the entire camp was repaired and livable. What would have taken a crew of hired workers a week, these people knocked out in one afternoon. I went back to my tavern room that night and did some math. 35 warriors total. All strong, all experienced, all better fighters than the regular slave soldiers that cost 5 times as much. Those 30 gold per head trained soldiers at the market? My barbarians would destroy them without breaking a sweat, even without going berserk. In rage mode, each one of them could handle 5 or 6 opponents. The only reason Florence armies beat barbarians at all is superior numbers and equipment. Armor and steel versus animal skins and stone clubs. Take away that advantage. Put them in wilderness conditions where both sides are equally messy and disorganized, and barbarians win every single time. 756 gold for 35 elite warriors plus a support crew of nearly 100. Best purchase ever. Now came the boring part, shopping. I spent the next several days turning gold into supplies. Weapons for the warriors. Nothing fancy, but real steel. Armor. 1 leather vest each. Why not iron armor? Because iron armor starts at 100 gold per set, and I am not spending 3,000 gold on outfits. These guys survived the frozen north wearing bear skins. They'll be fine in leather. Then came everything else. Carts, grain, seeds, farming tools, tents, building materials. Mountains of supplies piling up in the camp yard. The biggest pile by far was food. I needed at least a year's supply, because even if we claimed territory tomorrow, nothing would grow until next harvest season. 1 full year of feeding 126 barbarians who eat like they're training for competitive eating championships. My beautiful pile of gold was shrinking fast. But this was the investment. This was the startup cost for Sulun Industries, Frontier Division. The real challenge wasn't conquering land. With my abilities and 35 berserkers, clearing out monsters was the easy part. The hard part was everything after. Building, farming, making the territory safe enough that free people would actually want to move there. Because without citizens, there's no taxes. Without taxes, there's no income. Without income, the territory dies, and I'm just some guy in the woods with a bunch of barbarians and an empty wallet. I also couldn't exactly ask my barbarians to build proper houses. These are people whose idea of architecture is, pile some sticks together and throw a fur on top. Asking them to construct a village would be like asking a fish to climb a tree. I was going to need construction slaves, farming slaves, skilled workers, the whole package. But that was a problem for future me. Right now, Present me had a checklist: weapons, food, tools, carts, and a dream. A big, expensive, probably going to get me killed dream. Let's do this. Money. It disappears so fast it should be classified as a magic trick. 10 years in Collin City. Hustling, fighting, arena matches, consulting for noble ladies. I scraped together over 5,000 gold nars. Sounds like a fortune, right? That's a whole town's annual tax revenue. Enough to fund 100 professional soldiers for a year. Spend it in a week. Noble title? Expensive. Frontier charter? 500 gold. Weapons, armor, food, seeds, tools, building materials, carts, and new clothes for 35 barbarians who showed up basically naked? Absolutely devastating to my wallet. Oh, the clothes. I almost forgot about the clothes situation. These wild men own nothing but rags and scars. I couldn't exactly march them around looking like escaped convicts, so I took them shopping at the West Market, Cult City's biggest marketplace. Picture this: me, a 6'3" pretty boy noble, strolling through a crowded market with 30-plus shirtless barbarians behind me, each one over 7 feet tall, muscles bulging everywhere, covered in scars and tribal tattoos, faces completely expressionless, like angry statues that learned to walk. The crowd parted like magic. A 10-foot bubble of empty space formed around us wherever we went. People practically dove into shops to get out of our way. I felt like a mob boss taking his crew for a walk. Honestly, I was hoping some hot-blooded young hero would step up and try to defend the innocent, so I could teach him a valuable life lesson about minding your own business. But nobody dared. Disappointing. Shopping was smooth. Partly because I'd pre-ordered most of the supplies. Partly because when 30 enormous barbarians are standing behind you staring at the shopkeeper, nobody tries to overcharge you. Funny how that works. Are these prices fair? I'd ask, casually glancing over my shoulder at my wall of muscle. Oh, absolutely, sir. In fact, let me give you a discount, smart merchants. Very smart. I armed the barbarians with two-handed battle axes. Now, these axes were forged for normal-sized humans. For barbarians? Single-hand weapons. Imagine 35 giants dual-wielding axes designed for 2 hands, raging out, spinning into a horde of monsters like human blenders. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Of course, berserkers aren't perfect. The rage mode has one critical flaw that every kingdom on the continent has tried to fix and failed. When they rage, they lose their minds. They can barely tell friend from enemy. And when the rage ends, their strength drops by half, their stamina crashes to 30%, and they become helpless as kittens. Many berserker deaths happen not during the rage, but right after, when they come down from the high, surrounded by enemies, too exhausted to lift their weapons. Every major nation tried to solve this. Florence Kingdom, Gwent Kingdom, the Southern Allister Federation, they all ran experiments. Can we make them rage but keep their brains? Nope. More rationality means less rage. More rage means less rationality. It's a dead-end loop. Everyone eventually gave up. But in frontier warfare, against monsters with zero tactics, this weakness barely matters. Rage, kill everything, done. Simple math. I gave the barbarian families back at camp 2 months of food supplies, said my goodbyes, and rolled out of Cult City with my caravan. 30 wagons loaded to the brim, 35 armed barbarians, plus a mercenary company I hired as extra muscle. Over 100 people total. As a certain saying goes, the wheels of history have begun to turn. My history, specifically. We headed northeast, past the ring of smaller towns around Cult City, past the farmlands and settlements, into the wild spaces between human civilization. The roads got worse fast. Up here in the north, there's nothing but vast, empty wilderness between cities. The local garrisons do sweep operations every now and then. Ride out, kill a bunch of goblins and gnolls, ride home. But clearing them out completely? Impossible. Those things breed like cockroaches and can survive eating dirt. Literally, goblins will eat mud and rocks if they have to. Our caravan was big enough that nothing messed with us. Every monster within eyeshot took one look at our column of wagons and giant axe-wielding barbarians and decided today was a great day to be somewhere else. Which was good for survival, but terrible for my experience grind. I was itching to farm some XP, and every goblin was running away. The universe has a cruel sense of humor. 5 days into the wilderness, we reached Blackstone City, the absolute last human settlement in the Florence Kingdom. A border fortress with 5,000 residents and a garrison of 1,000 soldiers. No suburbs, no farming villages outside the walls. Just a stone box full of armed people staring nervously at the endless wilderness beyond. We didn't stop. Our wagons rolled past the city and kept going north. Past Blackstone, there were no more human cities. No more roads. No more safety nets. Just the raw, untamed frontier where everything wanted to eat us. This is where the fun started. Almost immediately, I noticed eyes in the shadows. Scouts. Watchers. Little monsters tracking our caravan from the tall grass, from behind rocks, from the tree-line. They didn't attack. We were too big, but they followed. Day after day, more joined. By day 4 past Blackstone, over 100 creatures were tailing us. A growing cloud of hungry, curious monsters just waiting for an opportunity. I smiled. That wasn't a threat. That was an opportunity. Time to let my barbarians test their new axes. Here's the cool part. The moment I officially led these warriors out of the city, my system pinged. I now had a registered military unit. Northern Barbarian Guard. 35 soldiers. Unit type, Barbarian. Morale, 85. These guys had automatically upgraded from basic, Barbarian Militia, to proper second-tier, Barbarian Warriors, just by joining my command. And Johnson, the big scary leader? He'd been classified as a Barbarian Champion and flagged as a hero unit. A hero unit. In MY Army. At level 12. I cracked my knuckles and looked out at those 100+ shadows stalking our caravan. Come and get it, boys. Class is in session. Let me tell you about my barbarians' class abilities, because they're honestly beautiful. At the basic level, even a rookie barbarian militiaman gets the strong trait, free bonus to strength and constitution just for being born a giant. Then when they upgrade to barbarian warrior, they unlock rage mode. That's the minimum requirement to be called a berserker. The ability to lose your mind and become a whirlwind of destruction. 70% pain reduction, 20% strength boost, 10% speed boost, 50% brain power reduction. Classic trade-off. Hit harder, think less. Johnson, my main man, was a tier above that, a barbarian champion. On top of strong and rage, he had tenacity, which basically means his body has evolved past normal human limits. More health, more stamina, faster recovery. And he had whirlwind slash, spin your body, spin your weapon, attach a blade of energy to it, and turn everything nearby into confetti. Now, these barbarians couldn't use a bow to save their lives. Literally, hand a barbarian a bow and he'll probably snap at trying to figure out which end to hold. So I gave them throwing hatchets instead. Turns out these maniacs are terrifyingly accurate with hand axes. 30 paces? Bullseye. Every single time. Apparently, when you've been throwing rocks and sticks your whole life, a proper steel hatchet is just an upgrade. So there we were, day 4 past Blackstone, with over 100 monsters lurking behind us like the world's ugliest parade. I pulled the reins. Stop the caravan, Johnson. Right here, boss. His shiny bald head gleamed in the sunlight. Take your guys. Clean up those tails. Fast. Johnson rubbed his chrome dome, flashed a grin full of teeth that looked like they could bite through steel, then turned around and bellowed. Boys, grab your axes. We got work. Axes out. 34 voices roared back. They charged toward the rear of the caravan like a stampede of shirtless bulls. Their formation was, let me be generous and call it, creative. A 3-month recruit from Cult City's basic training could march more neatly than this. They looked like a bar fight running downhill. But underestimate them, and you'd be dead before you finish laughing. 30 paces. Hatchets ready. These barbarians are fast. Their legs are so long they cover ground like sprinting giraffes. By the time the gnolls and goblins realized what was happening, the barbarians were already in throwing range. Some gnoll commanders started shrieking orders, trying to organize a countercharge. 100+ monsters versus 35 humans? They liked those odds. Confidence was high. Free throw. 35 hatchets whistled through the air. The first one hit a big gnoll square in the forehead. The axe blade sank halfway into its skull. Just halfway into its head. Like splitting a melon. That gnoll didn't scream. Didn't stumble. Just dropped like someone unplugged it. The monsters were packed so tight they couldn't dodge. Hatchets thudded into faces, chests, arms, legs. Lucky ones got hit in a limb and fell down screaming. Unlucky ones got their skulls cracked open and went straight to monster heaven. Or hell. Probably hell. Second volley. More hatchets. More screaming. More skulls. By the time 2 rounds of throwing axes had landed, a third of the monsters were already dead or dying. And then the barbarians reached melee range. What happened next wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. My barbarians, in their brand new leather armor, carrying real steel weapons for the first time in their lives, versus a ragged mob of monsters armed with sticks and fingernails. It was like watching a lawnmower fight a field of dandelions. They didn't bother dodging. Why would they? A goblin scratching at leather armor is about as dangerous as a kitten scratching a truck tire. The barbarians just slammed into the monster line at full speed. Bodies went flying. I saw a gnoll get body checked so hard its ribcage caved in, dead before it hit the ground, blood pouring from its mouth midair. And then the axes came out. Steel on flesh sounded like tearing wet cloth. Monsters fell in rows. Whole rows. Like wheat before a scythe. Except the wheat was screaming and the scythe was a 7-foot bald man laughing. Speaking of bald men, Johnson. Oh, Johnson. That magnificent psychopath grabbed his battle axe, a weapon the size of a dinner table, and went full windmill mode straight into the thickest part of the mob. Spinning, chopping, spinning, chopping. Everything in his path got opened up like a zipper. Behind him stretched a road of severed limbs and spilled guts, like the world's most horrifying red carpet. The surviving monsters took one look at the carnage, and their tiny brains made the smartest decision of their lives: run. They scattered in every direction at maximum speed. I've never seen goblins move so fast. Some of them might still be running. The whole fight lasted maybe 3 minutes. My barbarians tried to chase them down, but couldn't. The leather armor and axes slowed them just enough that the panicked monsters outran them. Those little cowards were motivated. The boys came back and started cleaning up the battlefield. First priority, recover every single throwing hatchet. Those things cost 1 gold NR each, forged from real steel, and I am not wealthy enough to throw away 35 gold coins every time we have a skirmish. This isn't a video game where ammo is free. This is my retirement fund turning into axes. Every hatchet was accounted for. These barbarians treated their new weapons like sacred treasures. Back in their old tribe, the best weapon they'd ever had was a rusty, chipped axe that probably predated their grandfathers. Now they had gleaming steel? They'd sooner lose an arm than lose a hatchet. The loot from the monsters? Absolutely nothing. As always, these wilderness creatures were flat broke. Not even a rusty coin between them. I killed 87 of them and got poorer doing it. Well, poorer in hatchet wear and tear anyway. But the system made up for it. Ding. Glorious victory. Casualties, 0. Enemies killed, 87. Experience, 576 plus 300 bonus. Loot, 1 iron ingot. 0 casualties, 0. Against 87 enemies. And my army's morale jumped from 85 straight to 100 maximum. These barbarians went from cautiously obedient slaves to ride or die warriors in one afternoon. Johnson came trotting over, grinning so wide his face might split. Anyone hurt? I asked. Boss, this gear is amazing. He slapped his leather vest like a proud dad showing off his kid's report card. 2 guys got some scratches. Nothing serious. We're used to way worse. All the hatchets recovered? Every single one. I nodded. Good man. Good troops. Good day. These barbarians used to live the same way as those monsters we just massacred. Animal skins, stone tools, rusty junk. Now they had real armor and real weapons, and they were treating each axe like a family heirloom. Give a desperate man a good weapon and a reason to fight, and he'll move mountains for you. Give him 34 friends with matching axes, and he'll move the whole mountain range. The battle results didn't surprise me at all. Steel versus sticks is not a fair fight. It's like bringing a tank to a pillow fight. Same principle that made 1 trained Roman soldier worth 5 barbarians back in my old world's history. Training plus equipment equals domination. After the massacre, our caravan's atmosphere changed completely. No more monsters stalking us. The hired mercenaries, who'd been looking at me like, who's this weird noble with the barbarian army, were now treating me like royalty. The caravan sped up too. Funny how motivation works when everyone just saw your bodyguards turn 100 monsters into salsa. 5 more days into the wilderness. 300 miles from the nearest human city. Way past the minimum distance the frontier charter required. I only needed to be 100 kilometers out, but I kept going. More distance means more room to grow. I was planning ahead. Future Suluan would thank present Suluan. The charter didn't set any limit on how much land you could claim. Technically, if you're strong enough, you can grab as much wilderness as you want. In practice, the biggest frontier territory ever established was about 300 miles across, because the deeper you go, the nastier the monsters get. Someone once reported seeing an actual dragon in the deep wilderness. That rumor was never confirmed, but earth dragons? Those are definitely real. One unlucky frontier noble learned that lesson the hard way. Built his whole settlement, got everything running, and then 200 earth dragons showed up and flattened everything. Earth dragons are mid-tier magical creatures at minimum, and the powerful ones can breathe actual dragon fire. Even a titled knight has to run from those. Only legendary knights can fight them. So yeah, don't build your house on a dragon's lawn. Noted. After scouting around, I found it. The spot. 2 rivers, the Red Sand River and the White Water River, curved around a raised hill of land, creating a wide, flat plain between them. The hill was only about 20 feet higher than the surrounding area, but it was the highest point around. The soil up there was hard and solid. Perfect foundation for a fortress. And the plain? Oh, the plain. The rivers had been depositing rich sediment here for centuries, creating incredibly fertile farmland that wouldn't need years of breaking in before it could produce crops. I did some quick mental math. If fully cultivated, this land could support 50 to 60,000 acres of farming. That's enough to feed over 10,000 people. 2 rivers for water, fish, and natural defense. High ground for a castle. Fertile soil for farming. Rich ecosystem all around. I'd found my kingdom's capital. We stop here, I announced. This is home. The caravan burst into activity. Tents went up along the riverbank. A temporary camp took shape in hours. The rivers were loaded with fish. When the mercenaries and barbarians started pulling them out, I nearly cried tears of joy. Every fish caught was grain I didn't have to spend. The barbarians foraged wild onions, ginger, and herbs from the surrounding wilderness, threw everything in pots with salt, and within an hour the whole camp smelled like a 5-star restaurant. After 2 weeks of trail food, that fish stew was the greatest meal of my life. I sat by the river, bowl in hand, watching wild ducks fly up from the reed beds, the sunset painting everything gold, and for one peaceful moment I thought, yeah, this is going to work. Then I got back to reality. Because reality had a deadline. Winter was coming. Not in the dramatic TV show way. In the very real, the northern winds will literally freeze goblins into ice sculptures way. I needed proper buildings with walls and roofs before the cold hit, or my people would become the world's most ambitious collection of frozen corpses. Problem, I had just over 100 people. Barbarians, mercenaries, and a handful of slaves I'd bought in the city. That's not enough to build a settlement before winter. Not even close. Solution? Free labor was running around the wilderness everywhere I looked. Goblins and kobolds are terrible fighters. We've established that. But you know what they can do? Carry rocks, chop trees, dig holes. They're like nature's construction workers, small, dumb, and surprisingly effective at manual labor when properly motivated. And by motivated, I mean terrified of the giant bald man with the axe. So after we got the basic perimeter fence up, I left the mercenaries to guard the camp and took my barbarians hunting. Not for food this time. For employees. We swept a 5-kilometer radius around the camp, hitting every small monster tribe we found. These were tiny groups, a few dozen goblins here, some kobolds there, the occasional gnoll pack. Against 35 fully armed barbarians, they had absolutely zero chance. One charge and the entire tribe would scatter like roaches when you flip the light on. But here was the tricky part. I didn't want to kill them. I wanted to catch them. And catching panicking goblins running in every direction is like trying to grab confetti in a hurricane. I had to get creative. Split the barbarians into 2 squads. I'd lead one team on the direct attack, while Johnson took the other team and set up ambushes along the escape routes. We'd charge in from one side. The goblins would flee the other way and run straight into Johnson's waiting arms. It was basically herding cats. Ugly, smelly, screaming cats. But it worked. Day by day, our workforce grew. The fence around the camp started filling up with captured goblins and kobolds, all looking very confused about their sudden career change from wilderness scavenger to construction laborer. Welcome to Su Lin Industries. Hard hats not provided. Escape not recommended. Let me be honest about something. I have absolutely no formal military training. In my previous life, I was a college student. Not military academy. Not special forces. Just a regular guy who watched a lot of war movies and played too many strategy games. Everything I know about tactics comes from Hollywood, video games, and whatever I've picked up living in this world. But here's the thing. When your enemies are kobolds, you don't need to be Sun Tzu. You just need to be smarter than a lizard with a stick. And that bar is low. I found our first target pretty quick, a kobold village about 200 strong. Village is being generous. It was a collection of reed-and-stick huts arranged in what I can only describe as organized chaos. The place looked like someone built a homeless camp during an earthquake. And the smell, I caught a whiff from 50 meters out, and my nose considered filing a formal complaint. Warriors. Crush them. Look, I'm not going to pretend I gave some brilliant tactical speech. My barbarians have exactly one gear: forward. Formations? Defense? Flanking maneuvers? These are foreign concepts. The entire playbook is run at the enemy and hit them with axes. My contribution as a commander basically amounts to pointing at something and yelling, "That way." I sent Johnson's squad ahead to set up an ambush along the escape route, then led the remaining 15 barbarians straight at the kobold camp. The kobolds saw us coming and, to my surprise, got excited. 200 kobolds versus 15 humans? In their tiny lizard brains, those were winning odds. They bared their yellow fangs and charged right at us. Poor, stupid little things. Morale boost. I activated my commander skill. Our already high morale of 90 maxed out to 100. My barbarians were practically vibrating with battle energy. Hatchets. Free fire. 2 volleys of throwing axes ripped through the kobold crowd like bowling balls through pins. Holes opened up in their formation. If you could call that panicking mob a formation, and we poured through. I led the charge personally. With my stats, I could have soloed this entire camp before breakfast. Add 15 raging barbarians behind me, and we cut through those kobolds like a hot knife through butter. Every kobold in my path went down instantly. The fight lasted maybe 3 minutes before the kobolds completely broke. Their morale shattered like cheap glass, and they ran for it. Now came the fun part. I pulled my guys back from full killing mode. Don't kill them. Chase them. Herd them left. See, dead kobolds are useless. Living kobolds can carry rocks and dig holes. I needed construction workers, not corpses. We spread out into a half circle behind the fleeing kobolds, like cowboys herding cattle. Ugly, screaming, panicking cattle. We kept about 30 meters back, close enough to be terrifying, far enough that they wouldn't get so desperate they turned and fought. Whenever a group tried to veer off in the wrong direction, I'd send a couple barbarians to scare them back on course. The kobolds ran. We jogged behind them. They ran some more. We jogged some more. 2 kilometers of the world's most pathetic foot chase. By the end, those kobolds were so exhausted their tongues were literally hanging out. Kobolds aren't built for endurance. They're the bottom feeders of the wilderness food chain. My barbarians, with their 7-foot legs, were barely breaking a sweat-keeping pace. Then the kobolds reached Johnson's ambush point. Snap! Trip ropes went taut across the ground. The front runners went down face first like dominoes. The ones behind tried to stop, but got shoved forward by the mob. Row after row of kobolds tripped, stumbled, and piled up in a writhing heap of scaly bodies. They were so exhausted from the run that once they fell, they couldn't even stand back up. Johnson's team was ready with nets. Womp, 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 netted like fish. The kobolds who managed to stop and turn around found barbarians on every side. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. One by one, they dropped to the ground and begged for their lives. Some were literally groveling, pressing their little lizard faces into the dirt. And then, this is my favorite part, a few kobolds switched sides immediately. I'm talking zero hesitation. They grabbed ropes and started helping the barbarians tie up their own people. Just walked right over and started binding their neighbors like, yeah, we're with these guys now. Unbelievable. I respect the survival instinct, but that's a special kind of shameless. I felt a strange kinship with those particular kobolds. We rounded up over 160 healthy prisoners. the seriously wounded ones. Well, I don't waste medicine on kobolds. That sounds harsh, but medicine costs gold and kobolds cost nothing. We strung them together in groups of 15, each group on one long rope. Why? Because if one kobold in a chain tries to run, the entire line falls over in a tangled mess. It's like a natural anti-escape system. Brilliant, if I say so myself. The prisoners marched back to camp without a single complaint. These creatures were so terrified they would have walked into a volcano if I pointed at it. The few who'd switched sides were practically skipping. Fun fact about kobolds: they're called dogheads because their language sounds like barking, but they actually look more like small bipedal lizards. Black or brown scales, short bodies, sensitive to bright light. And here's the hilarious thing. Kobolds claim they're descended from dragons. They actually insist they carry dragon blood. Nobody takes this seriously. It's like a chihuahua claiming it's related to a wolf. Technically maybe, but come on. They do speak a terrible, broken version of Draconic though. And they lay eggs. And very rarely, a mutant kobold is born with weak magic abilities, becoming a kobold sorcerer. These sorcerers are so bad at magic that their mere existence is an insult to every real spellcaster on the continent. It's like calling someone a chef because they can microwave instant noodles without burning them. We didn't find any sorcerers in this village, which isn't surprising. Even among humans, only about 1 in 1,000 is born with magical talent. For kobolds, the ratio is probably worse. The only race with naturally high magic ability is elves. Practically every elf can cast spells, but elves sealed themselves inside their emerald forest centuries ago, and nobody's seen one since. Anyway, day 1 of the kobold recruitment drive, 160 new employees acquired. Total cost, some hatchet wear and a bit of cardio. At this rate, I'd have a construction crew by the end of the week. Slavery, forced labor, involuntary employment. Call it whatever makes you comfortable. I call it aggressive hiring. When I got back to camp with my new kobold employees, dinner was already cooking. The river was basically a free buffet, fish everywhere, just waiting to be caught. The barbarians had a big pot of fish stew bubbling away, and the smell was incredible. Dinner was simple, fish stew with black bread. Now, black bread is an interesting product. When it's fresh from the oven, decent. After it cools down, you could use it as a weapon. Seriously, a stale loaf of black bread could dent a helmet. It tastes like chewing sawdust mixed with regret. But here's the trick. Slice it thin, dunk it in boiling fish stew, and let it soak up all that rich, savory broth. Suddenly that rock-hard bread becomes soft, flavorful, and actually delicious. Add some tender fish meat on top, and you've got yourself a proper meal. I wolfed down a huge bowl, leaned back, and rubbed my belly like a satisfied cat. Johnson, take the leftover soup and fish bones to the kobolds. Don't let them starve. Kobolds will eat anything. Fish bones and cold soup? That's a feast for them. A few barbarians carried buckets of leftovers to the pen, and the kobolds went absolutely feral with excitement. Their eyes were glowing like little lanterns. If the barbarians hadn't beaten the fear of God into them earlier that day, those kobolds would have trampled each other to get to the food. I told them to line up. They had zero concept of what a line was. Imagine 200 lizard dogs all trying to occupy the same 3 square feet. Easy fix. I had my barbarians grab clubs, big ones, thick as a man's arm, and stand next to the food buckets. Every kobold that didn't follow the stand behind the one in front of you rule got bonked. One whack, and they figured it out. Within minutes, I was looking at the world's wobbliest, most crooked, but technically functional line. Education through percussive instruction. Works every time. Next morning, the kobolds went to work. Under the loving supervision of barbarian overseers and their motivational whips, those little reptiles learned commands fast. They couldn't do anything complicated, but digging, hauling dirt, chopping trees? Perfect kobold activities. Construction speed doubled overnight. Then something amazing happened. Some of the kobolds started volunteering as overseers. That's right, kobold middle management. These little traders walked right up to the barbarians, pointed at their own people, and started bossing them around. And they were ruthless about it. Way harsher than my barbarians ever were. A barbarian would give a lazy kobold one whack. A kobold overseer would scream in their face for 5 minutes, then whack them 3 times, then scream some more. Kobolds oppressing other kobolds with more enthusiasm than the actual oppressors. I've never been so disturbed and impressed at the same time. Productivity went up another 20%. Over the next few days, I took the Barbarians on a regional tour. And by tour, I mean systematic destruction of every monster settlement within 20 kilometers. We smashed one gnoll tribe, 2 goblin villages, and another kobold camp. 300 more goblins and 100 more kobolds joined my involuntary workforce. The gnolls? I killed every single one. Brutal? Maybe, but practical. My mercenaries back at camp couldn't control gnolls. They're too big, too aggressive, too smart. If I left gnolls in camp while I was out on patrol, they'd start a rebellion faster than I could say, bad idea. Plus, gnolls eat 4 to 5 times more food than kobolds, but only do 2 to 3 times the work. The math doesn't check out. Dead gnolls are the only good gnolls in my economy. With my growing army of goblin and kobold laborers, construction flew. The first big project, the perimeter wall. Defense first, everything else second. We couldn't build a proper stone wall. Not enough people, not enough time. Instead, we hammered wooden stakes into the ground, packed mud and reeds around them, and built the ugliest, most improvised wall in the history of fortification. The entire perimeter was nearly 2 kilometers long, forming a rough square. By Florence Kingdom standards, that's the size of a mid-sized town's walls. For a brand new frontier camp? Absurdly ambitious. But we did it. The moment the last section of wall went up, my system chimed. Ding. Territory wall complete. Basic construction milestone achieved. Territory interface unlocked. Oh boy. Here we go. Territory unnamed. Area 20 kilometers radius from camp. City none crude camp. Public morale 60. Tax revenue 0. Income negative. Population 45 human slaves, 35 barbarians, 337 goblin slaves, 352 kobold slaves, 40 mercenaries. Supplies 30 wagons, 200 units of grain, 20 units of smoked meat. Current food stores will last approximately 4 months. Buildings, wall basic. A wall made of logs, mud, and reeds. It looks unreliable, and it probably is. But it can stop basic wilderness attacks. Defense, 20. Durability, 50. Stability, 10. I stared at these numbers and rubbed my face with both hands. 0 income. Negative cash flow. A wall described by my own system as looking unreliable. Any random knight's estate in the south was in better shape than my entire territory. I wasn't building a kingdom. I was running a charity for monsters that also happened to be hemorrhaging gold. But the system also unlocked a building menu, and that got me excited. Lord's Castle, the administrative center, symbol of sovereignty. Huge bonuses to governance, stability, authority. Can train administrative staff. This was the big one. The statement piece. The I'm not leaving building. Barracks, proper training facility for soldiers. Keeps the army in fighting shape, boosts morale and discipline. Soldiers living here are always in training mode. Comfort goes down, but toughness goes way up. Fair trade. Residential houses, homes for citizens. Increases sense of belonging, stability, happiness, and population growth. Because it turns out, people are more likely to have babies when they have a roof over their heads. Revolutionary concept. I looked at my building menu. I looked at my dwindling gold reserves. I looked at my wall that was basically a mud fence held together by prayers and reeds. Every empire starts somewhere. Mine was starting at rock bottom with a negative bank balance. 700 kobold goblin construction workers who needed to be bonked into doing their jobs, and a wall my own system was insulting. But you know what? Rock bottom has one big advantage. The only direction is up. My system unlocked a whole construction catalog, and reading through it felt like browsing a city-building games tech tree. Except everything costs real gold and real sweat instead of clicking a mouse. Farmland. Grow food inside the walls so you don't starve during a siege. Beacon towers. Early warning system, like a medieval alarm network. Logging camp. Chop trees. Make money. Trading market. Attract merchants. Generate income. But crime goes up because apparently capitalism brings pickpockets. Roads. Want to get rich? Build roads first. Even my system knows that ancient proverb. Security office. Because once you get enough people together, somebody's going to steal something. Water wells. Clean drinking water and siege insurance. And my personal favorite, a river port. See, I've got two rivers wrapping around my territory. The red sand and the white water. Wide, calm, full of fish, with thick reed beds along the banks. A port here would mean cheap transportation, military mobility, and basically unlimited seafood. If these rivers flow all the way to the ocean, which I suspect they do, future me might be running international trade routes. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, I need to survive winter. I'm not stupid enough to rely on just one food source, so I split my workforce. Some kobolds and goblins started plowing farmland inside the walls. Another group went to the riverbank to build a dock and simple fishing boats. More fish means less grain consumed. Basic nutrition math. A human body burns through way more grain when there's no protein or fat in the diet. Fish solves that problem and can be salted and preserved as dried fish for emergencies. Then I had a genius idea. The reed beds along both rivers were packed with nesting water birds. Every nest had several eggs. Free protein, just sitting there waiting to be collected. But I'm not an idiot who destroys his own resources. I gave strict orders. Take only half the eggs from any nest. Never hit the same nest twice in a row. Sustainable harvesting. Let the birds keep breeding, and we get a permanent egg supply. From that day on, our dinner menu included egg drop soup, fish stew, black bread, bird eggs. Honestly, my frontier camp was eating better than most working-class families back in Cult City. Those city folks wished they had fish and eggs every meal. I planned the whole territory layout using the system's blueprint. Western and northern sides along the rivers. That's where the port and trading market would go. Commercial district. Eastern side, military barracks. The Lord's castle sits dead center on the north-south axis, facing south. Everything symmetrical, everything organized. It looked beautiful on paper. In reality, it was still a mud camp full of kobolds, but a man can dream. After distributing all the construction tasks, I went back to doing what I do best, patrolling and killing things. All that monster hunting finally paid off. Level 13, and 5 of my Barbarian warriors had upgraded to Tier 3 Barbarian champions, unlocking tenacity and whirlwind slash. My little army was getting scarier by the day. I now had 4 unspent attribute points, 3 skill points, and another silver treasure chest burning a hole in my inventory. Chest first. Always chest first. Ding. Skill book, stone wall formation. After the system merged it with this world's rules, it transformed into something called mud to stone. Basically, I could instantly raise walls of solid stone straight out of the ground. Just point at dirt, cast the spell, and boom, a 10-meter long, 3-meter high, 1-meter thick stone wall appears out of nowhere. I spent 2 skill points learning it immediately. No hesitation. A spell that builds fortifications in seconds? In a frontier territory where I'm literally trying to build a castle? That's not just useful, that's a cheat code for construction. After learning it, I discovered it worked both ways. Mud to stone and stone to mud, meaning I could also dissolve stone walls. Siege warfare just became very interesting. Enemy hides behind a wall. I delete the wall. Need a wall in the middle of a battle? I create one from thin air. I tested it right away. Golden light flowed from my hands into the ground. The earth rumbled and pushed upward, and within seconds a solid stone wall stood in front of me where there'd been nothing but dirt. I walked over and knocked on it. Thunk thunk. Real stone. Harder than regular rock, actually. Quick math. Each wall costs 30 magic points. My magic pool was 190, so I could make 6 walls before running dry. My healing spell only costs 10 points per use, giving me 19 casts. Not bad, but not great. So I dumped all 4 of my saved attribute points into Spirit. Spirit jumped to 23, magic pool hit 230. Now I could make 7 walls or cast healing 23 times. Was putting everything into Spirit the optimal min-max strategy? Probably not. But you know what's optimal? Being a one-man construction company who can build stone fortifications with a wave of his hand, while everyone else is still mixing mud and stacking logs. Those kobolds had been spending weeks building my mud and reed wall. I just built a better wall in 4 seconds. Should I feel guilty about making their work obsolete? Maybe. Do I? Not even slightly. Time to upgrade this camp from pathetic mud fence to actual fortress. Every day for the next week, I had the same morning routine. Wake up, walk. To the wall. Blast it with mud to stone until my magic ran dry. Then go patrol. Come back in the afternoon when my magic recharged, blast some more wall. Repeat. Within days, an entire side of my sad little mud-and-reed fence had transformed into a legitimate stone wall. The kobolds who'd spent weeks building that mud wall just stood there watching me turn their work into solid rock in seconds. I could feel their tiny lizard brains short-circuiting. Wait, he could have done this the whole time? No, little guys. I needed your mud wall first. Can't turn mud into stone if there's no mud. You were essential. Sort of. Then something incredible happened while I was out mapping the territory. I'd been sketching the landscape on parchment, rivers, hills, forests, the basic stuff, when suddenly my system went ding and activated a strategic map. My hand-drawn map looked like a kindergartner's art project compared to this thing. The system map was basically Google Earth. A perfect miniature replica of my entire territory, complete with zoom in and zoom out. I could see every hill, every bend in the river, every cluster of trees, all labeled and annotated. Even better, there were colored dots. Green dots for my allies. All the barbarians showed up green. Yellow for mercenaries, friendly but not fully mine. Blue for slaves. And red for anything hostile. I had a 100-meter radar around my position showing every living thing nearby. In battle, this meant I could see ambushes before they happened, track enemy movements in real time, and coordinate my troops with perfect information. My enemies would be fighting blind while I had a bird's-eye view. The only limitation? Everything outside my territory was blacked out. Unknown. Like fog of war in a strategy game. But within my borders? Total omniscience. I zoomed the map all the way out just to see how big this world was. My territory shrank to a tiny speck. A microscopic dot on a massive world map. This place was enormous, way bigger than I expected. Humbling? Sure. Motivating? Absolutely. Back at camp, things were actually coming together. The farming team had plowed 50 acres inside the walls and 200 acres outside. I had them plant potatoes exclusively. Why potatoes? Math. Wheat yields about 300 to 400 pounds per acre up here in the north. Potatoes? Over 1,000 pounds per acre. And potatoes can grow 2 harvests per year even in cold northern climates. That's 6 to 8 times more food than wheat from the same land. I'm not stupid. I'll switch to wheat later when we're stable, because fresh white bread is one of life's great pleasures. But right now, survival beats flavor. Potatoes it is. The port on the northwest side was nearly finished. Nothing fancy, just a simple dock for fishing boats. We'd chopped down trees and had the craftsmen build boats directly from fresh lumber, which meant these boats would probably warp and fall apart in 3 months. But 3 months of fishing was 3 months of free food, so who cares? And the fishing was incredible. Just 5 or 6 little boats were pulling in 200 to 300 pounds of fish per day. That alone was enough to feed the entire camp. The surplus got salted and dried in the sun, stockpiled for winter. Between the fish, the potatoes, and the bird eggs from the reed beds, my little frontier camp was eating like royalty. I built a massive warehouse to store everything: grain, smoked meat, dried fish, tools, building materials, all organized and categorized. This warehouse was so important that I finished it before my own castle. My home could wait. My food storage could not. I assigned 5 barbarians to guard it around the clock and declared a 30-meter exclusion zone. Nobody, not mercenaries, not slaves, nobody, got near my supplies without authorization. In a frontier settlement, food is more valuable than gold. The Lord's castle was still under construction. And by under construction, I mean still digging the foundation. I refused to rush it. This was going to be my castle, built entirely of stone, and it was going to be proper. The plan: pack the foundation with compacted mud, then use mud to stone to convert the entire thing into solid rock. Layer by layer, floor by floor. It would take time, but when it was done, it would be a fortress that could stand for centuries. While all this was happening, I also started building roads. 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 You have no idea how much I hate the roads in this world. Let me paint you a picture of what roads look like in the Great Florence Kingdom. Even in major cities like Cult City, supposedly the crown jewel of the North, the streets are an absolute nightmare. The main avenue? Okay, that's passable. Everything else? Mud, sewage, dead rats, mystery fluids of unidentifiable origin, random garbage dumped everywhere. The entire city smells like the inside of a toilet that hasn't been flushed since the founding of the kingdom. And when it rains, when it rains, the whole city becomes a swimming pool filled with liquid human waste. Walking through the streets feels like wading through a septic tank. People just dump their chamber pots out the window and hope for the best. The best being that it lands on someone else. I am not allowing that in my territory. From day one, I planned proper roads, hardened surfaces, gravel coating, actual drainage ditches on the sides. And I was going to establish laws. Strict hygiene laws. No dumping garbage in the streets. No using the alley as a bathroom. All waste goes to designated collection points, gets hauled outside the city, and gets composted into fertilizer at a processing facility I'd built specifically for that purpose. That's right. I was going to turn poop into profit. Human waste becomes fertilizer. Fertilizer grows potatoes. Potatoes feed people. People produce more waste. Waste becomes more fertilizer. The circle of life, powered by toilets. Every kingdom in this world has knights, wizards, and legendary warriors. Mine would be the first with functioning sewers. And honestly, I think that makes me the most dangerous lord on this continent. I was in the middle of inspecting a drainage ditch. Yes, my life has come to this, getting excited about drainage ditches, when one of my barbarian warriors started yelling. "Boss, look, smoke signal." I looked up. Northeast horizon. Black smoke rising into the sky. My blood went cold, then hot, then cold again. See, right after we set up camp, I'd built beacon towers around the territory perimeter. Simple design, mud platforms converted to stone with my spell, stocked with kindling, manned by lookouts. 1 column of smoke means about 100 enemies. 2 columns means 500 plus. 3 columns means 1,000 or more. I counted the smoke columns. 500 enemies. Minimum. I was on the wall in 3 jumps. Lock up the kobolds and goblins. All of them. Now, look, I like my little lizard construction workers. They're productive. They're obedient. They're cheap. But do I trust them? During a battle? When their wild cousins are attacking from outside? Absolutely not. One whiff of opportunity, and those kobolds would flip sides faster than you can say, career change. Into the pens they go. All warriors report. Mercenaries TO defensive positions. The camp erupted into organized chaos. Barbarians grabbed their axes and assembled in under a minute. After weeks of constant fighting, my squad had leveled up significantly. Half of them were now Tier 3 Barbarian champions. And Johnson, my beautiful bald wrecking ball, had evolved into a giant axe berserker. A full tier above champion. The man was basically a walking natural disaster with a shiny head. The mercenaries showed up too. Their captain, a guy named Gene, immediately opened his mouth and said exactly the wrong thing. "Lord Sulun, I think we should abandon the camp and run. The enemy is still far away. If we leave now, we can probably escape." I stared at him. He kept talking, but his voice got quieter and quieter as my eyes got colder and colder. Eventually he just stopped, like a wind-up toy running out of spring. "Are you done?" I said. He nodded, looking like a dog that just got caught eating shoes. "Good. Now listen. The enemy force is between 500 and 1,000. Yes, that's a lot. But this is also an opportunity. If we crush them here, every monster tribe in the region will hear about it. We'll have months, maybe years, of peace to build and grow. Running means starting over with nothing. Fighting means winning everything." I paused and looked at every single mercenary. "And for those of you who fight well, 20 acres of farmland in my territory when it's established. Outstanding performance? I'll personally grant you a knight's title." You could practically hear 40 mercenary brains doing math at the same time. 20 acres of land. That's generational wealth for a common soldier. A knight's title? That's a lifetime of status, respect, and privilege that most of them could never dream of earning otherwise. The mood shifted instantly. Slumped shoulders straightened. Nervous eyes hardened. Shaky hands gripped weapons with purpose. Morale went from, "Let's run," to, "Where do I sign up?" in about 5 seconds. Money talks. Titles scream. Now, the real reason I needed these mercenaries wasn't because I couldn't handle the monsters. It was geometry. My camp's perimeter was nearly 2 kilometers long. 36 barbarians couldn't cover all of it. The enemy could just walk around any section we were defending and wreck everything I'd built. I needed the mercenaries to plug the gaps while my barbarians did the actual killing. Then things got worse. Hoofbeats. A scout on a chestnut horse came galloping toward camp, screaming, "Urgent! Urgent military report." He skidded to a stop in front of me, practically fell off the horse, and gasped out the news between heaving breaths. "Lord Suluan. Bad news. The enemy force is at least 700. Besides gnolls, goblins, and kobolds. There are over a dozen trolls. Trolls. For those of you unfamiliar with trolls, let me explain why that word made everyone within earshot go pale. Trolls are massive, brutally strong, and love smashing things with spiked clubs. But that's not the scary part. The scary part is their regeneration. Cut off a troll's arm, it grows back. Stab them through the chest, the wound closes. Break their legs? Give it a minute, they'll be walking again. The only things that can permanently kill a troll are magic, fire, or strong acid. Everything else is just a temporary inconvenience. A dozen trolls leading 700 monsters. Coming straight from my barely built camp with its half stone, half mud walls. I smiled at the scout. Good work. Go rest. Then I turned to my people and made a decision. If we might die tomorrow, we're going to eat like kings today. Open the warehouse. Break out the white bread, the smoked meat, the sausages, and those barrels of ale we've been saving. Today, everyone eats meat. In this world, normal people eat 2 meals a day and consider themselves lucky if there's any protein involved. I was adding a third meal, a full lunch, loaded with the good stuff. Fish, smoked meat, sausages, ham, mushrooms, fresh bread. Everything. The kitchen exploded into activity. Fish getting gutted. Giant pots boiling. Smoked meat getting sliced. Sausages sizzling. The smell that drifted across camp was so good that even the locked-up kobolds were pressing their faces against the pen, drooling. I grabbed my bowl first. Rich, thick stew with mushrooms, smoked ham, and chunks of fish. Tore off a piece of white bread. Actual soft white bread. Not that brick-hard black stuff. And dipped it in the broth. Sat on a rock and ate. The barbarians and mercenaries dug in after me. Nobody spoke. Just the sound of 70-plus warriors eating what might be their last good meal, sitting in the dirt, staring at the horizon where 700 enemies and a dozen unkillable trolls were marching toward us. Johnson sat next to me, a massive bowl in his giant hands, eating quietly. For a man about to face a small army, he looked remarkably calm. I sipped my stew and did the math in my head. 300 to 400 goblins and kobolds, cannon fodder, barely a threat. 300 gnolls, serious fighters. And a dozen trolls, regenerating nightmare monsters that could only be killed by fire or magic. Fire or magic. I looked at my hands. I had magic. I looked at the torches around camp. We had fire. This was going to be ugly. But ugly is just another word for interesting. I finished my stew, wiped my mouth, and stood up. Time to plan a troll barbecue. Let me do the math on my defensive forces real quick. 35 barbarians. 40-something mercenaries. 45 craftsmen slaves who I absolutely refused to let anywhere near the fighting. Those guys cost me over 1,000 gold nars. If a single carpenter died on the battlefield, that's more money lost than the entire goblin army was worth. My craftsmen were going to hide in the safest corner of camp, and they were going to like it. After our generous lunch, I sent the mercenaries to prep their gear while I rushed to the northeast wall section. Problem: most of the east wall was still mud, not stone. I hadn't gotten around to converting it yet, and the enemy was coming from the northeast. Of course they were. My camp had 2 gates, east and west. The enemy would almost certainly hit the east gate. So I had the barbarians rig the approach with traps. These guys were wilderness survival experts. Back in their tribal days, they hunted using traps more than direct combat. Pit traps, spike traps, falling rocks. They set them up like they were decorating for a party. A murder party. Meanwhile, I had the craftsmen slaves haul out all the dried reeds we'd been collecting and pile them near the east gate. You'll see why in a minute. 3 o'clock. The afternoon air was cool, autumn in the northern wilderness. Then a dark line appeared on the horizon. As it got closer, it wasn't a line anymore. It was a wave. 1,000-plus monsters, goblins, big goblins, kobolds, gnolls, surging toward us like a dirty, screaming tsunami. Most of them were practically naked, wielding sticks and bone clubs. Only the gnolls had metal weapons, and even those looked like they'd been hammered out by a blind drunk with a rock. And then I saw the trolls, towering above the rest, muscles bulging like knotted rope, each one carrying a spiked club that weighed about 100 pounds. Ugly didn't begin to describe them. They looked like someone had tried to sculpt a person out of garbage and then brought it to life out of spite. Here's the fun part. The scout said 700. The actual number? 1,400. Double what we expected. 20 to 1 odds. 20, 2, 1. The mercenaries on the wall went white. I could literally see the blood draining from their faces. Hands trembling, knees shaking, eyes empty. A couple of them looked like their souls had already left their bodies and were filling out paperwork in the afterlife. Jean, my favorite coward of a mercenary captain, was instantly at my side. Lord Suluan, there's over 1,000 of them. We're not even 100. This is impossible. Forget about noble pride. We need to release the kobold slaves as a distraction, abandon all supplies, and run. I slapped the wall and laughed. Full belly laugh. The kind that makes people question your sanity. Retreat? Against this? These are chickens and mud dogs. I'm disappointed they didn't bring more. Do you know how many free construction workers just walked up to my doorstep? If I capture half of them, my castle will be finished by next month. The mercenaries stared at me like I'd grown a second head. The barbarians? They started cheering. A month of following me, and these maniacs had gone full ride or die. Johnson was grinning so wide his bald head was basically one giant smiley face. The attack began before the mercenaries could finish contemplating whether I was brave or insane. The answer is both. Arrows whistled in from the monster army. I flicked my spear and batted them aside like mosquitoes. The barbarians swatted them away with their axes. A few mercenaries got hit, but the arrows were so pathetically weak they bounced off leather armor. Kobold archery is a joke. Weak arms, weak bows, bone arrowheads that couldn't pierce a wet blanket. When the Knoll commander saw the arrows doing nothing, he roared, smashed a nearby goblin with his club for being useless. Poor little guy went flying, and ordered the full charge. The monster horde surged forward. 30 meters to the wall. Full sprint. Then the traps kicked in. Crunch. A goblin stepped into a covered pit, and wooden spikes punched through its foot. Thud. A falling rock trap dropped a boulder on a Knoll's skull. Monsters in the back couldn't stop and trampled the ones who'd fallen. More traps triggered. More screaming. The approach turned into a gauntlet of pain. But 1,400 monsters is a lot of monsters. The trap slowed them, killed a few dozen, but the wave kept coming. They hit the east gate. It broke open, and I let it happen. That's right. I didn't reinforce the gate. I didn't send anyone to hold it. I wanted them to break through. The monsters poured in, drunk on victory. In their little monster brains, breaking through a human wall meant one thing: loot, food, weapons, clothes, and of course, the classic monster delicacy, soft, tender human meat. They were so excited about imaginary treasure that not a single one stopped to wonder, why was this so easy? They rushed through the gate and immediately hit a funnel. Stone walls. On both sides. 30 meters long, my mud to stone special, impossible to climb. The mob that had been spread across a wide approach was suddenly squeezed into a narrow corridor with no escape routes. They couldn't go left. They couldn't go right. They could only go forward. And what was waiting at the end of that corridor? 2 lines of barbarian warriors. 17 on each side. Giant axes raised. Teeth bared. Eyes gleaming. A meat grinder disguised as an entrance. The front row monsters saw what was waiting and tried to stop. But 1,400 panicked monsters were pushing from behind. There was no stopping. There was no turning around. The pressure of the mob shoved them forward like a conveyor belt feeding directly into a wood chipper. My barbarians started swinging. Axes rose and fell. Rose and fell. Over and over. Each swing cut through 2 or 3 bodies. Monsters dropped in rows, not one by one, but in layers. The corridor floor turned red in seconds. Bodies piled up so fast the next wave had to climb over their own dead to reach the killing zone. And reach it they did. Straight into the axis. It was beautiful, horrifying, efficient, like a factory assembly line, except the product was dead goblins. The killing started immediately, and it did not slow down. My barbarians held the corridor like a dam holding back a flood. Gnolls, goblins, kobolds, didn't matter. Nothing survived more than 2 swings. The narrow space between my stone walls turned the monsters' numbers from an advantage into a death sentence. They couldn't spread out, couldn't flank, couldn't dodge. They could only shuffle forward into the axis. The barbarians worked in shifts. Front row chops until tired, back row steps up, front row catches their breath. A rotating murder assembly line. Efficiency that would make any factory manager weep with pride. Here's the beautiful part. The monsters in the back of the horde had no idea what was happening up front. They kept pushing forward, shoving their friends deeper into the grinder. The ones in the middle could see the carnage, wanted to run, but couldn't, crushed between the wall of barbarian axes ahead and the wall of clueless idiots pushing from behind. Hundreds of monsters packed into a 30-meter stone corridor, and the number kept growing. I stood on a raised platform behind my barbarians, watching the kill box fill up like a bathtub, waiting, counting. When the corridor was stuffed to maximum capacity, wall-to-wall monsters, shoulder to shoulder, barely able to breathe, I gave the order. Fall back. My barbarians disengaged and retreated. 15 minutes of non-stop butchering had drained them, but they'd done their job perfectly. The moment they pulled back, the monsters surged forward with joy. Freedom. Victory. The stupid humans are running. They made it about 5 steps. Rumble. A stone wall erupted from the ground right in front of them, sealing the exit shut. Monsters slammed into it face first. Bones cracked. Blood sprayed. The ones behind kept pushing, crushing the front row against solid rock. Some gnolls tried to climb over. Too crowded, no room to jump. A few lucky ones managed to scramble up by stepping on goblins' heads, got over the wall, and landed on the other side, where 5 mercenaries with spears turned them into pin cushions before their feet touched the ground. I looked down at my trap. Hundreds of monsters, packed like sardines, sealed inside a stone box with no way out. I smiled. In the sunset light, I'm told that smile looked absolutely terrifying. Good. I slammed my spear into the ground. Light it up. Torches appeared along the top of every wall. Dozens of them. Then the fire pots came, clay jars of burning oil, lobbed over the walls into the crowd below. The oil ignited instantly. The dried reeds I'd had the craftsman pile inside earlier caught next, turning the entire corridor into a bonfire. Monsters covered in burning oil slapped at themselves, which only spread the fire to everyone they touched. A chain reaction of flames rippling through the packed crowd. The screaming. Oh God, the screaming. Hundreds of voices shrieking in pure terror and agony, echoing off the stone walls, amplifying into a sound that I will hear in my dreams for the rest of my life. And probably my next life too. They tried to escape. There was nowhere to go. The gate? I dropped a reinforced iron portcullis over it. The walls. Solid stone, too hot to touch. The exit? Sealed with magic. They were trapped in an oven. Some monsters, in their desperation, started killing each other, clearing space, climbing on corpses, trying to stack bodies high enough to climb out. A few actually made it over the wall. They dropped to the other side, smoking, burning, half dead, and were immediately chopped down by the barbarians and mercenaries waiting outside. The fire grew and grew. The reeds burned out. The oil burned out. But by then, the monster's own body fat had become fuel. The temperature inside the kill box was so extreme that the stone walls started glowing faintly red. The air outside got so hot that nearby mercenaries' hair started curling and their skin turned pink from the heat. Inside, the screams got weaker. Not because the monsters were escaping, but because the fire had consumed all the oxygen. Monsters who hadn't burned were suffocating. One by one, the cries faded. The corridor became a crematorium. Those mercenaries who'd been talking about running an hour ago, now they were standing at the walls, weapons ready, eyes blazing, killing every half-cooked monster that crawled out with savage enthusiasm. Nothing motivates a scared man like watching his enemy burn. Suddenly, 20-to-1 odds didn't seem so scary anymore. I didn't stick around to watch. The monsters in the kill box were already dead. They just hadn't finished dying yet. I had bigger problems. A chunk of the enemy army was still outside the walls, and I wanted them. Every kobold and goblin out there was a potential construction worker. Every enemy that escaped was a future threat. I looped around through the west gate and came around to the east side. Outside the wall, a mob of remaining monsters was hammering at the portcullis, trying to break in. 2 trolls were smashing it with their massive clubs. The iron gate was dented and warped, but holding. The smoke and fire leaking from inside had clearly spooked them. They knew something terrible was happening in there. When they saw me rounding the corner with 35 barbarians at my back, the monster commander, a big gnoll in crude iron armor, let out a howl and rallied his forces. And here's where things got interesting. These monsters didn't just blindly charge at us. They actually organized. Kobolds and big goblins up front as a screen. Trolls in the second row as heavy hitters. Gnolls on the flanks for pincer attacks. The front line even formed a crude spear wall using sharpened bones and pointed rocks. I raised my eyebrows. Actual tactics? From these guys? That gnoll commander was smarter than the average monster. Not smart enough to survive the night, but smart enough to be surprising. No matter, smart or stupid, organized or chaotic, when the unstoppable force hits the immovable object, physics wins. And today, physics was on my side. I buckled my beast-face iron armor tight, gripped my 3-meter spear, rolled my shoulders, and cracked my neck. My barbarians formed a wedge behind me. The classic arrowhead formation, simple, brutal, effective. I was the tip, the point of the spear, the first thing the enemy would see and the last thing they'd ever see. Charge. 36 of us sprinted towards several hundred monsters. The math looked insane. The sight of it must have looked even crazier. A handful of humans running toward an army, screaming, weapons raised, absolutely zero hesitation. But here's the thing about a wedge charge led by a man who can one-shot trolls. The math doesn't matter. What matters is the pressure wave of pure, concentrated violence that hits the enemy line like a freight train. And we were 10 seconds from impact. 35 barbarians running at full speed is not something you want to be standing in front of. The ground shakes. The axes gleam. The expressions on their faces say, "We are going to turn you into a fine red mist and enjoy every second of it." Now, if we'd been charging at the Florence Kingdom's elite bear legion, fully armored heavy infantry, trained professionals, my barbarians would have had a rough time. Steel plate armor is no joke. But these wilderness monsters, wearing nothing, armed with sticks and bones, against steel axes and leather armor? It's not a battle. It's a math problem with a very messy answer. 50 meters out, the kobold archers let loose. Arrows fell like ugly rain. I twirled my spear and deflected every single one aimed at me. My barbarians? They just held their axes over their vital spots and kept running. Arrows bounced off leather armor like pebbles off a truck. A few didn't even stick. The kobolds might as well have been throwing insults. 20 meters. The big goblin spear wall was right in front of us. A line of oversized goblins holding sharpened bones and pointed rocks like proper soldiers. I'll admit, it looked almost impressive. Almost. If I charged straight into those spears, I'd be fine, but my barbarians might take casualties. Hatchets. Throw. 35 spinning axes screamed into the spear formation. The effect was, let's say, catastrophic. Several big goblins lost their heads. Literally. The neat formation disintegrated like a sandcastle in a hurricane. What was left couldn't have stopped a stiff breeze, let alone us. We hit what remained of the spear line and went through it like tissue paper. The kobolds behind them saw this, and their morale evaporated instantly. Total collapse. Didn't even try to fight, just screamed and scattered. Our wedge punched straight through the center of the enemy army without slowing down for a second. Big goblins, gone. Kobolds, gone. And then we slammed into the gnolls. These gnolls were tougher than the ones I'd fought before. A mid-sized tribe that had survived the wilderness through genuine strength. They roared and charged at us with real aggression. I swung my spear sideways. The iron shaft hit a gnoll with so much force that the sound of it tearing through the air was like a thunderclap. The gnoll's body folded. Ribcage shattered. Spine snapped. Internal organs turned to soup. It flew backward, spraying blood from every opening in its face. And it wasn't alone. The swing caught 3 others, and they all went ragdolling through the air like broken toys. Behind me, my barbarians activated Whirlwind Slash. Giant axes spinning, white energy blades trailing, gnolls getting bisected left and right. It was harvest season, and gnolls were the crop. The gnoll commander was screaming orders, desperately trying to rally his forces. Attack! Attack them! There's only 30 of them. Nobody listened. His army had seen enough. They'd watched their front line vaporize, their flanks crumble, and their center get punched through like wet paper. No amount of screaming was going to fix that. But the commander had one last card to play. 9 trolls, each one over 8 feet tall. The ultimate muscle. I just finished clearing the last knoll from my path when I heard it, a roar from my right side, followed by a rush of wind pressure. A troll was barreling toward me like a runaway freight train, swinging a 100-pound spiked club at my head. I raised my spear and blocked. The impact was massive. My refined steel spear actually bent under the force. The shockwave knocked nearby goblins off their feet. But here's the thing about trading blows with me. I win. The troll's own club bounced back, so hard it launched the troll backward. It crashed to the ground, coughing up blood. On any other creature, those injuries would be fatal. On a troll, give it 5 minutes, and it'll be back on its feet, good as new. That's stupid regeneration. The other 8 trolls saw their buddy get swatted, and, instead of reconsidering their life choices, they all charged at me. Because trolls don't do fear, they do angry and angrier. I looked at my bent spear, grabbed both ends, bent it back straight with my bare hands. The mercenaries on the wall probably needed new pants after seeing that. Then I faced the charging trolls and smiled. Time for the big move. Frostblade. 3 blades of pure ice materialized in front of me. The temperature around me dropped so fast that nearby gnolls' muscles seized up, their bodies locking in place. The air itself seemed to freeze. The 3 ice blades launched forward. They hit the charging trolls and kept going. For one perfect, silent second, nothing happened. The trolls stopped mid-stride. The gnolls behind them froze. Everything within 30 meters of the blade's path just paused. Then the trolls fell apart. Not collapsed, fell apart. Their massive bodies, sliced into clean geometric sections, separated and dropped to the ground in frozen chunks. No blood. Every drop had crystallized into ice on contact. Their organs, their muscles, their bones, all flash-frozen solid. The regeneration that made trolls unkillable can't regenerate when every cell in your body is a tiny ice cube. The ice blades carved a 30-meter corridor of death through the enemy army before dissipating. Everything in that path, big goblins, gnolls, trolls, was sliced and frozen. Dead. Permanently. No coming back. No regeneration. Just meat popsicles scattered across the battlefield. Up on the wall, Jean the mercenary captain whispered something that I heard about later. Even the heroes from Legends couldn't be stronger than this. That's sweet, Jean. Remember when you wanted to run away? I remember. The monster army saw their 9 invincible trolls turned into ice sculptures, and something broke inside their collective brain. Whatever tiny thread of courage they'd been clinging to snapped. The entire force collapsed into a stampeding, shrieking rout. The Gnoll commander, that smart, organized leader who'd actually managed to form battle lines, took one look at the frozen troll chunks, said absolutely nothing, and sprinted in the opposite direction at maximum speed. Smart for once. But too late. My flying horse speed trait kicked in. I closed the distance between us like a cheetah chasing a particularly ugly gazelle. Every monster in my path dove out of the way. The slow ones got shredded by the air pressure of my passing spear. The Gnoll commander looked over his shoulder, saw me getting closer, pumped his legs harder. Terror does wonderful things for cardio, but it wasn't enough. I shifted my grip on my spear, wound up, and threw it like a javelin. The spear hit the Gnoll commander dead center, punched clean through his body, and pinned him to the ground like a bug on a board. He twitched a couple times, then went still. Dark blood crawled down the shaft and pooled in the dirt. Every surviving monster on the battlefield saw that and collectively lost the will to live. I swept my eyes across the field, slowly, deliberately, and watched hundreds of creatures flinch, lower their heads, and start trembling. Not one of them dared to look me in the eye. I've been told my post-battle stare is colder than the northern ice winds. I don't practice it or anything. It just happens. Naturally intimidating. One of the perks of being me. No time to enjoy the moment, though. These terrified, exhausted monsters were gold to me. Not dead enemies, but future construction workers. Their army had marched for miles and then fought a losing battle. They had 0 energy left. Running? They could barely stand. Round them up. Every last one. The Barbarians and I went to work catching stragglers like we were running the world's most aggressive employment agency. Then my system chimed, and I nearly tripped over a dead gnoll because I was too busy reading the notification. Ding. Epic victory. Not glorious. Not impressive. Epic. That's a tier I'd never seen before. Under your command, You and your army have won an epic victory. Surviving enemies will spread tales of your deeds across the wilderness. Your reputation grows. Reputation 1. Your name is beginning to spread across the wilds. Experience earned 15,432. Level up to 14. Rewards 2 free attribute points, 2 skill points, 2 silver treasure chests, 5 gemstones, and a new talent, Advanced Tenacity. Advanced Tenacity. Damage from normal attacks reduced by 50%. Health permanently increased by 50 points. Stamina increased by 50. Stamina recovery speed doubled. Let me translate that. Regular weapons now do half damage to me. I recover energy twice as fast. And I have so much health that killing me would take longer than most battles last. I was already hard to hurt. Now I'm approaching, why bother trying, territory. I was still grinning at my stats when Johnson walked over looking uncharacteristically sad. Boss, 3 of the brothers are hurt bad. I don't think they're going to make it, right? Reality check. Time to be a leader, not a gamer. He took me to them. 3 barbarians with horrible wounds. Deep slashing injuries from Knoll champions. Those 7-foot-plus elite fighters. Our leather armor could handle goblins and kobolds just fine, but against Knoll champions? About as useful as wrapping yourself in newspaper. The worst one had his chest ripped open. I could see his ribs, 2 of them broken, and through the gap, his internal organs were visibly moving. 1 inch deeper, and he'd have been gutted like a fish. The fact that he was still alive was pure barbarian stubbornness. I knelt down, set the broken bones back in place. He screamed, but he'll forgive me, and activated life remedy. Green light gathered in my palm and sank into his body. The bleeding slowed. The wound started closing. Then the light faded. Only a third healed. Life remedy is a beginner spell. It's not going to reassemble a man who was nearly cut in half. I hit him with a second cast. The wound still wasn't fully closed, but his life signs stabilized. He'd stopped actively dying, which in frontier medicine counts as a success. I patched up all 3 the same way. Double healing spell, wound powder, bandages, strict bed rest. They'd be out of action for at least a month, but they'd live. In a world where a wound like that is basically a death sentence without a temple priest or expensive holy water, my bargain basement healing magic was a lifesaver. Literally. Holy water costs 10 gold per bottle, by the way. 10 gold. For fancy, glowing water. My healing spell costs 0 gold and unlimited refills. Take that. Organized religion. Now for the really good news. Every single surviving barbarian warrior had upgraded to Tier 3 barbarian champion after this battle. All of them. My entire squad was now elite. And Johnson? My magnificent bald wrecking ball. He'd broken through to the ultimate barbarian class. Barbarian Berserker Lord. His traits all leveled up too. Basic strong became intermediate strong. Permanent 4 to strength and constitution. Basic tenacity became intermediate tenacity. More health. More stamina, faster recovery, 15% damage reduction. And his rage ability? Evolved into advanced rage. 80% pain reduction, 50% strength increase, 20% speed boost, rage duration up 50%, and the post-rage weakness period reduced by 30%. The man was now several times stronger than when I bought him. If I put him in proper iron armor, he'd be an unstoppable killing machine. A bald, grinning, axe-swinging force of nature. The final body count was devastating for the enemy. Over 600 burned alive in my trap. 200 killed in the field fighting. Fewer than 100 escaped into the wilderness. And 500 captured alive. 500 new slaves. Big goblins, kobolds, and yes, even some gnolls this time. The big goblins were actually decent workers, about 4.5 feet tall, dumber than a box of rocks, but they followed orders and had surprisingly good discipline for monsters. Perfect slave labor. The prisoners were absolutely traumatized. Not a single one resisted. Not a peep. They'd watched their army get funneled into a fire pit, seen their trolls frozen into ice cubes, and watched their commander get javelined into the dirt. Rebellion was not on anyone's to-do list. I walked back to camp absolutely drenched in blood. Not mine. Well, mostly not mine. Every step left a red footprint. Blood dripped from every gap in my armor like a leaking faucet. I probably looked like I'd taken a bath in a slaughterhouse. Johnson, take the prisoners back to camp. Separate pens. Keep them locked down tight. I paused and grinned. And don't let any escape. I need those guys to build my castle. Johnson wiped blood off his shiny bald head, turned toward the cowering mass of 500 prisoners, and gave them the most terrifying smile I've ever seen. Teeth white against blood-smeared skin, eyes gleaming with the calm satisfaction of a man who'd just reached the peak of his power. "Don't worry, boss. I'll watch them personally," the prisoners whimpered. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. But then I remembered I needed a castle, a barracks, houses, roads, a port, a market, and about 50 other buildings. "Sorry, guys. Welcome to Su Luen Construction Company. Dental plan not included." The fire in the kill box burned until midnight. Midnight. 6 hours of continuous burning. When we finally opened it up the next morning, I thought I was ready for what I'd see. I was not ready. Imagine a room the size of a basketball court filled with charcoal sculptures that used to be living things. The smell was, I can't even describe it. A mix of burnt hair, scorched meat, and something chemical that made my eyes water and my stomach do backflips. I've killed hundreds of monsters without flinching, but this almost made me throw up. The funniest consequence? Nobody in camp could eat meat for days. Every time someone looked at a piece of cooked fish or smoked sausage, they'd remember that smell, and suddenly they weren't hungry anymore. 1,000-person army of monsters couldn't break our spirit, but the lingering aroma of barbecued knoll nearly destroyed our appetite permanently. We dug a massive pit, dumped all the bodies, buried them, and scrubbed the ground with water. The east gate still smelled faintly of blood and char. I think it always will. But here's the silver lining. After we wiped out the biggest knoll tribe in the region, the entire neighborhood went quiet. Word spread fast in the wilderness. Don't go near the humans on the hill. They'll burn you alive and freeze your trolls into ice cubes. Every small tribe within 50 miles packed up and moved somewhere far, far away. Peace. Beautiful, productive peace. With over 1,000 slaves now in my workforce, construction went into overdrive. The port finished in 3 days, proper docks, fishing stations, the works. Daily fish hauls increased dramatically. More slaves went to farming. More went to building projects. The territory was actually starting to look like a real settlement, instead of a mud camp with delusions of grandeur. But then reality punched me in the wallet. I sat down in my temporary lord's office, which was basically a slightly nicer tent with a chair, and called in my bookkeeper. This guy was a slave I'd found who could read and do math. His skills were mediocre, but in a camp full of barbarians, goblins, and kobolds, can count past 10, made him basically a genius. "How much money do we have left?" He flipped through his notebook nervously. "My lord, 300 gold nars. 300. I started with over 5,000. Bought a noble title, a frontier charter, 126 barbarians, weapons, armor, supplies, wagons, food for a year, an abandoned military camp, hired mercenaries, bought craftsman slaves, and fought a small war. And now I had 300 gold left. That wasn't even enough for a decent shopping trip back in Cult City. And the food situation, since you captured 500 more slaves, food consumption has doubled. The mercenaries have been paid. We don't have enough left to buy supplies from the city." I rubbed my chin. The classic startup problem. We were growing fast, but bleeding cash faster. I needed people to build the territory, but people need food, and food costs money, and money comes from taxes, and taxes come from citizens, and citizens won't come until the territory is established, and the territory can't be established without people. It's a chicken and egg problem, except the chicken costs 50 gold, and the egg needs to be defended from gnolls. First things first, I needed more hands that didn't need constant supervision. "Johnson, right here, boss." He appeared at the door like a bald genie. "Go back to Cult City. Bring your families here. All of them. The territory is safe now." His face lit up like a sunrise over his chrome dome. "Really? I'll get a team together right now. Go fast, come back faster." The barbarian women and children would be a huge help. Those, women and children, could outwork most grown men back in civilization. One barbarian housewife could do the labor of 3 human farmhands while carrying a baby. Oh, and Johnson, one more thing. Spread the word in the city. Tell everyone that Lord Su Luen has successfully established a territory in the wilderness and is looking for trade partners. We need merchants. I didn't have much to trade yet, but merchants are like sharks. They smell opportunity from miles away. If even one trader made the journey out here and saw what I was building, word would spread. More traders would follow. Supply chains would form. Economics would kick in. Johnson left with 2 warriors. I stopped sending hunting parties for more slaves. Honestly, the nearby tribes had already figured out that living near me was hazardous to their health. Most had relocated. Smart move. The few remaining were too small to bother with. Instead, I focused all energy on building. And after several days of concentrated effort, the blacksmith shop was finally complete. The moment the last brick went into place, my system went absolutely berserk. Ding, ding, ding. Blacksmith shop constructed. Equipment database loading. Metalworking techniques importing. Forging technology importing. 10%, 20%, 50%. Import complete. System shop, weapons and equipment section unlocked. Oh yes. The blacksmith shop description was nice enough. Improved weapon quality, faster crafting, better training for smiths. Standard stuff. But the real prize was the shop. I opened the system menu and there it was, a full catalog of weapons and armor from the Rise of Empires game. Swords, spears, bows, crossbows, light armor, heavy armor, shields, everything organized and priced. Not just basic gear either. There were premium weapons, enhanced equipment, specialty items. I scrolled through the list with the excitement of a kid in a toy store. Then I scrolled to the legendary section. The Heaven's Edge Imperial Sword? Not available. The Emperor's Blade? Nope. The Serpent Spear? The Sky Halberd? Nothing. All the legendary weapons were locked. Grayed out. Unavailable. I mean, those things weren't even purchasable in the game, so I shouldn't be surprised. But a man can dream. Still, having access to a full weapon and armor catalog was game-changing. Once I had iron flowing into the smithy, I could equip my entire army with proper gear instead of basic leather and repurposed human-sized axes. Speaking of iron, I had a lead. Those gnolls we'd massacred had been carrying metal weapons. Crude, ugly, full of slag, but metal nonetheless. Gnolls couldn't buy iron from humans. There's a trade embargo on selling metal to monsters, which meant they were mining and smelting their own or somewhere nearby. If I could find that mine, my iron supply problems would be solved forever. I couldn't go take it now, though. Not with only 100 combat-capable people. That mine would have to wait until my population grew. Same with finding a coal deposit for fuel. For now, I had a blacksmith shop, a weapons catalog, 300 gold coins, 1,000 mouths to feed, and a territory that was somehow both thriving and broke at the same time. Every business book I never read in my previous life probably had a chapter about this exact situation. Something about cash flow challenges in early-stage ventures, or scaling workforce ahead of revenue. I just called it being poor with a lot of employees, but we were alive. We were growing. And somewhere out there, a Gnoll iron mine had my name on it. The empire wasn't built yet, but the foundation was solid. Mostly because I literally turned it into stone with magic. The blacksmith shop was finished, and my system decided to dump an entire shopping catalog into my brain. It was like opening Amazon for medieval weapons. Swords? Got him. Spears? Yep. Armor sets? Pages and pages. Materials? Oh boy, regular iron, refined steel, dark iron, divine iron, all available for purchase. Then I looked at the prices, and my liver hurt. Regular stuff? Reasonable. 100-year dark iron ingot? 100,000 gold nars. For one piece of metal. I had 300 gold to my name. I couldn't afford the decimal point on that price tag. And the legendary materials, 1,000-year dark iron, 9 heaven dark iron, ultimate tungsten steel, not even listed, not available. The system was basically taunting me. Here's a menu of incredible things you'll never afford. Enjoy window shopping, peasant lord. In the game, 100-year dark iron was a must-have item. Wear it, and it passively regenerates your health and boosts your stats. Every serious player carried some. In this world, it costs more than my entire territory is worth. Cool. Cool. I also found equipment blueprints and forging technique manuals in the shop. Learn a blueprint. Craft the item yourself. The technique manuals boost your blacksmith skill level. Price per manual? 1,500 gold nars. I had 300. I couldn't even afford to read about getting better at making things. After browsing the entire catalog, I came to a humbling conclusion. I couldn't afford a single complete equipment set. The lord of this territory, owner of 1,000 slaves, conqueror of armies, Slayer of Trolls. And I was too broke to buy one suit of armor from my own blacksmith shop's catalog. But there was a silver lining. A fat, beautiful silver lining. The shop prices were for buying finished products directly from the system. Having my own blacksmith make the same stuff. Half price. Those two-handed axes I bought for 30 gold each in Cult City, my blacksmith could forge one for 15. And once I had my own iron mine, even cheaper. Here's the thing that really bugged me. My barbarian warriors were fighting at maybe 60% of their potential. According to the system, a proper barbarian champion should be equipped with a two-handed axe, chainmail armor, throwing axes or javelins, and a backup weapon. A barbarian giant axe warrior should have full iron plate armor. What did my guys actually have? One axe, one leather vest, one throwing hatchet. That's it. The absolute minimum loadout. Like sending a soldier to war with a pistol and flip-flops. They were winning battles through raw talent and sheer violence while essentially running around half-naked. Imagine how terrifying they'd be with real equipment. I built the smithy next to the river on purpose. Once my tech level improved, I planned to install water-powered machinery, water wheel hammers, hydraulic bellows, the works. My stepfather, back in Collin City, had used this technology in his ironworks. It wasn't complicated engineering, just required good water flow, which I had plenty of. Water power would cut production costs even further. Now, let me introduce you to Bruce. My blacksmith slave. This guy used to own his own forge in the city, a legitimate middle-class craftsman making decent money. Then he discovered gambling. Lost everything. Lost the shop. Lost his freedom. Got sold into slavery because he couldn't stop betting on whatever this world's equivalent of horse racing is. Gambling addiction. Turning skilled professionals into my property since forever. Bruce practically danced when he saw the completed smithy. My lord, this is perfect. Give me materials and I'll forge anything you need. Fix the soldiers' equipment first. Then start on farming tools. Do good work, and I'll upgrade your rations. Thank you, my lord. I'll work day and night. His eyes were literally sparkling. An upgrade in rations meant fish and meat instead of thin soup. It also meant his own sleeping space instead of sharing a room with 10 other snoring, farting slaves. For a man who'd been eating scraps and sleeping in stink for months, that was paradise. This brings me to my management philosophy. I designed a whole incentive system for the slaves, because I'm not an idiot. If you treat every slave the same regardless of effort, you get minimum effort from everyone. Why work hard if lazy Steve next to you gets the same bowl of gruel? So I created tiers. Bottom tier, basic laborers. Goblins, kobolds. They get, not starving, rations. Just enough food to keep them moving. That's their ceiling and their floor. Next tier, skilled workers. Better food, clear work targets. Hit your targets? Eat well. Exceed them? Bonus portions. Meat. Maybe an egg. Higher tier, specialists who've proven themselves. Good food. Private quarters, no more communal sleeping. And at the very top, freedom. If a slave accumulated enough contribution points, I would officially release them and grant them citizen status. Sounds generous, right? Here's the catch. The contribution threshold was set at 10 times the slave's purchase price. A slave I bought for 6 gold would need to generate 60 gold worth of value before earning freedom. And after becoming a free citizen, they'd still live in MY territory, pay MY taxes, work MY land, and contribute to MY economy. I wasn't losing anything. I was creating a loyalty ladder where every rung benefited me more than the last. The slaves thought they were climbing toward freedom. They were actually climbing deeper into my economic ecosystem. The day I announced this system, productivity across the entire camp doubled. Overnight, every slave suddenly had a reason to work harder. A carrot dangling in front of every donkey. I love capitalism, especially when I'm the only capitalist. Now, the real treasure from the battle wasn't gold, it was scrap metal. Those gnolls and trolls had been carrying massive spiked clubs and crude iron weapons. Sure, the quality was garbage, slag everywhere, terrible smelting, but iron is iron. And those troll clubs were heavy. A single spiked club weighed over 100 pounds. Even after you melted out all the junk, you'd get 80 pounds of usable iron. We'd collected thousands of pounds of scrap weapons. Bruce and the other smiths melted it all down and produced several thousand pounds of iron ingots. Not premium quality, but absolutely usable. Quick math. Repair all the barbarians' damaged weapons. barely a dent in our iron supply. Forge farming tools from the lowest quality iron, another small dent. And the rest? Armor. Several thousand pounds of iron meant I could forge over 100 sets of armor. My barbarian warriors, who'd been fighting in leather vests this whole time, taking wounds that proper armor would have prevented, were about to get a serious upgrade. Imagine 35 barbarian champions, fully armored in iron, dual-wielding oversized axes, going berserk. The wilderness wasn't ready. Honestly, I wasn't sure the kingdom was ready. But first, Bruce needed to actually forge everything. And that was going to take a while. One blacksmith, several thousand pounds of iron, 100 sets of armor. Good thing I had plenty of goblin assistants to pump the bellows. The smithy was up and running, and Bruce was doing his thing. The man stripped down to basically a loincloth, which is the universal blacksmith dress code apparently, and started barking orders at his apprentices. Carts of scrap weapons rolled into the furnace. The whole building felt like standing inside a dragon's mouth. 50 degrees minimum. My eyebrows were sweating. Now, here's where my previous world knowledge hit its limits hard. We didn't have coal. No coal mines discovered yet. So we were using charcoal, which tops out at about 700 degrees in open air. In a proper furnace with bellows, you can push it to 900, maybe 1,000. But smelting iron needs at least 1,000 degrees. I did remember one useful thing from my previous life. If you preheat the air before blowing it into the furnace, you can boost the temperature by about 200 degrees. That pushed us to 1,200, actually higher than basic coal smelting. Take that, coal industry. And honestly, not having coal might be a blessing in disguise. Coal contains sulfur. Sulfur gets into the iron. Sulfur makes iron brittle. Brittle weapons snap in half during a fight. Doesn't matter how cheap your production is if your swords break like breadsticks. I'd rather have slower production of good iron than fast production of garbage. As for making steel, I knew the basic concept. Steel is iron with less carbon. Too much carbon, iron. Too little, soft wrought iron. The perfect amount, beautiful, strong steel. What's the exact perfect ratio? No clue. Should have memorized more Wikipedia articles before getting Ice Guide, I muttered, rubbing my temples. This is the universal regret of every person who's ever been transported to another world. You remember the theory, but not the numbers. I could explain what steel is to anyone who asked. I just couldn't tell you how to make it precisely. Fortunately, Bruce was an experienced smith. He knew the old-fashioned method. Heat the iron, hammer it, fold it, heat it again, hammer it again. Repeat. One cycle is one fold. Do it 100 times and you get 100-fold steel, the best material commercially available in the Florence Kingdom. Most military gear used 30-fold steel. 100-fold was reserved for elite weapons. The dwarves made better stuff, of course. Dwarves always make better stuff. It's basically their entire cultural identity. But even dwarves struggled with 100-fold steel. They just had secret techniques on top of that. With the smithy running, I turned to my real problem, money. Or rather, the complete absence of it. I'd given Johnson 100 gold for the trip back to Cult City. That left me with 200. My territory was a money pit, constantly consuming, producing nothing. 2 years minimum before we could be self-sufficient. 2 years of feeding over 1,000 mouths with no income. I checked my system inventory for anything sellable. 2 refined steel ingots. Some gemstones from the battle rewards. I inspected the gems. Most were mediocre quality. 2 decent ones. If I found a jeweler, maybe 300 or 400 gold total. That would last about a month. For a brief, beautiful, insane moment, I considered robbing a dragon's hoard. Legend says dragons are obscenely wealthy. Mountains of gold, jewels, magical artifacts, the works. Of course, to rob a dragon you first need to find a dragon, then survive a dragon, and that requires being at least legendary rank. I'm level 14. The dragon would use me as a toothpick. Moving on. Wait, I still have 2 silver treasure chests. I cracked them open. Ding. Congratulations. You received Mechanical Mastery Skill Book. Ding. Congratulations. You received North Star Celestial Elixir. The skill book was interesting. In the original game, this skill was called Iron Machine Control. It let you summon mechanical soldiers like the legendary wooden ox and flowing horse automatons. But in this world, the system had adapted it into actual mechanical engineering knowledge. I couldn't build robot soldiers yet. The upgrade path was ridiculous. First upgrade mechanical mastery to advanced, then learn iron machine secrets, then find an NPC called the Peach Blossom Immortal, pass his trial, and then receive the ultimate reward, golem construction techniques. Golem construction. The system had literally reverse-engineered wizard magic and turned it into craftable technology. Steel golems. A single steel golem could demolish an entire order of knights. Not cavalry, actual knights. Individual superhuman warriors, wiped out by one walking metal giant. My hands were shaking just reading about it. But reality check. I had no idea where to find the Peach Blossom Immortal. In the game, you just walked to a peach grove and he was standing there. In real life, could be anywhere on this massive planet. The system gave zero hints. Thanks for nothing, you useless game engine. Still, even without the golem endgame, mechanical mastery was incredibly useful right now. I could design and build machines, water-powered forging hammers, hydraulic bellows, mechanical tools. A water-powered hammer could do the work of dozens of blacksmiths, striking with perfect consistency and tireless force. Hundredfold steel that took weeks by hand, days with a machine. My stepfather's ironworks back in Collins City already used water-powered equipment. Now I could build my own, possibly better. I learned the skill immediately. Knowledge flooded into my brain. Gears, levers, pulleys, water wheels, drive shafts, transmission systems. Beautiful, practical, profit-generating knowledge. Then I picked up the other reward. The North Star Celestial Elixir. It was gorgeous, a crystal bottle filled with blue, semi-transparent liquid. When I tilted it, tiny stars sparkled inside, like someone had bottled a piece of the night sky. Even in the game, this stuff was rare. The description was simple and devastating. A miraculous liquid formed from the concentrated power of the stars. Permanently increases strength or constitution by 3 points. Only one stat is affected per use. Can be used repeatedly, +3. Permanently. That's the equivalent of months of brutal training condensed into one gulp. I stared at the bottle. 3 points of strength would bring me to 29, nearly 30, which was approaching superhuman territory. 3 points of constitution would make me even harder to kill. Decisions. But honestly, what a day. I'd gone from broke and worried to having a working smithy, a mechanical engineering degree downloaded into my brain, a future golem army to dream about, and a magic star smoothie that would make me permanently stronger. Being poor never felt so promising. I drank the star juice without hesitation. You don't stare at a free stat boost and think about it. You chug. The liquid was cool going down, like swallowing liquid moonlight. Energy spread through my body, settling into my bones, my muscles, my core. A few seconds later, ding. Constitution increased by 3 points. 25 became 28. Just like that. I flexed a few times, rolled my shoulders, did a couple squats. My body felt denser somehow. Tougher. Like my skin had been upgraded from leather to steel. Between my advanced tenacity reducing damage by 50% and my constitution now at 28, hitting me was becoming increasingly pointless for most creatures on this continent. But enough admiring myself. I had machines to build. The water-powered forging hammer was my top priority. The concept was simple. Use river current to spin a water wheel. Convert that spinning motion into an up and down hammering motion, and let physics do the work that would normally require a very tired blacksmith swinging a hammer 10,000 times. I drew up blueprints for every component. The tricky part was the transmission, the thing that converts circular rotation into vertical hammering. But honestly, it's just a camshaft. A wheel with wooden pegs that push the hammer up as it spins, then gravity brings it down. I added a gear system to adjust speed and force. Faster hammering for thin work, slower and heavier for serious forging. My craftsmen weren't geniuses, but they could follow instructions. With me supervising every step, we had a working water-powered forging hammer in 2 days. The moment of truth. Open the gate. The sluice opened. River water roared down the channel and slammed into the water wheel. The massive wooden wheel groaned, shuddered, then started turning. Slowly at first, then faster. The connected hammer rose, reached the top. Boom. The hammer crashed down onto the iron ingot with a thunderclap. Sparks exploded in every direction. The ground vibrated under my feet. Boom, boom, boom. The rhythm picked up, steady, relentless, mechanical. Each hit landed with identical force, identical angle, identical precision. No human blacksmith could ever match this consistency. The iron ingot visibly compressed and transformed under the assault, becoming denser, tighter, stronger with every blow. In a fraction of the time it would have taken by hand, the ingot was done. Bruce brought me the finished steel bar. I bounced it in my palm. Heavy, solid, with a satisfying ring when I flicked it. Not quite as good as my system-grade refined steel, but close. Way better than anything a manual forge could produce. Ding. Water-powered forging hammer integrated into blacksmith shop. Production efficiency 3. Steel quality 1. 3 times faster production. Better quality steel. And the machine never gets tired, never takes breaks, and never develops a gambling addiction. Sorry, Bruce. The machine is my new favorite employee. Nice work, I told Bruce. Use this quality steel to forge 35 sets of equipment, custom two-handed axes, and armor. How long? Bruce hesitated. My lord, the apprentices are still learning, and armor is complex work. You have 2 weeks. The water hammer does the hard part now. If you can't manage it, I let the silence fill in the rest. Consider it done, my lord. Wonderful. Motivation achieved. I pulled up my system's equipment database and sketched out the proper Barbarian giant axe warrior loadout, the weapons and armor that the system recommended for my troops' current class level. These blueprints were designed for 7-foot barbarians, not regular humans. The axes were longer, heavier, with broader blades. 30 pounds of steel per axe. A normal person couldn't even lift one of these things, let alone swing it in combat. I sent the blueprints to Bruce and moved on to my next project. The water-powered bellows. This one went even faster. Same principle, water wheel provides power, mechanical linkage converts rotation into a pumping action that forces preheated air into the furnace. But bigger, way bigger. 7 feet tall, 10 feet wide. Would have needed 10 slaves working in shifts to operate manually. The water wheel ran it effortlessly. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Superheated air blasted into the furnace. The temperature inside the smelting chamber spiked immediately. Slaves near the furnace turned tomato red, sweat pouring off their bodies so fast it evaporated before it could drip. Scrap weapons and raw iron went into the furnace and melted, not slowly softened, actually liquefied. We'd never reached temperatures this high before. Ding. Water-powered bellows integrated into blacksmith shop. Work efficiency 2. Flame temperature 2. Higher temperatures meant faster smelting, purer iron, and better steel. Combined with the forging hammer, my little frontier blacksmith shop was now producing at a level that would make city forges jealous. Bruce and his apprentices fell into a rhythm. Melt, pour, hammer, quench, grind. Day and night the smithy rang with the sound of progress. The first custom Barbarian battle axe came off the line within days. I picked it up and gave it a test swing. This was not the same wimpy axe I'd bought in Cult City. That one was designed for a 5'8" human. This beast was built for 7-foot warriors. Longer handle, heavier head, wider blade, perfect balance. 30 pounds of forged steel that could split a knoll from skull to pelvis. My barbarians had been using human-sized axes this whole time. It was like watching a basketball player try to play with a child's toy. Functional? Sure. Optimal? Not even close. Now they'd finally have weapons that matched their bodies. Axes that felt natural in their massive hands. Armor fitted to their enormous frames. 2 weeks. 35 custom weapon and armor sets. 1 overworked blacksmith with a gambling problem and 4 apprentices who were learning very, very quickly. The sound of hammers on steel echoed across my territory day and night. It was the sound of an army being born. The first finished axe needed a test run. I handed it to Hans, one of my barbarian champions, and pointed him at a pine log as thick as a man's waist. 1 swing. 2 pieces. Clean cut. The log didn't even have time to complain. Then he tried it on a knoll-spiked club, those 100-pound monstrosities that trolls swing around. 3 chops, and the club snapped like a twig. The axe blade, barely a nick. Just needed a quick sharpening. Hans lost his mind. He started swinging that axe around like a kid with a new toy, spinning it, twirling it, doing trick moves that made the air scream. His old axe, the one from Cult City that he'd been treating like a holy relic for weeks, got tossed in the dirt without a second glance. Dumped. Forgotten. like an ex-girlfriend at a party. Boss, this AXE is incredible. He came sprinting at me, swinging the axe in excitement, and the blade whistled past my face close enough to shave my eyebrows. It sliced the measuring stick in my hand clean in half. Having fun? I said with the calmest smile I could manage while my heart tried to exit through my throat. Then I kicked him so hard he rolled across the ground like a human tumbleweed. Take that axe and go cut trees. 30 trees, each today. And no trees. And no dinner. Every barbarian in eyeshot grabbed their axes and scattered like cockroaches in a kitchen light. Amazing how fast 7-foot warriors can move when food privileges are threatened. Next up, armor testing. Bruce had produced a half-body plate setup, chest plate, arm guards, and leg protectors. Not full plate, which covers everything but turns you into a walking tin that can barely turn its head. Half plate was the sweet spot. Solid protection for the vital areas, but your legs and joints stayed free for actual movement. I tested the armor against swords, solid deflection. Arrows bounced right off. Heavy weapons like maces, some impact gets through, but nothing critical. For fighting wilderness monsters armed with sticks and bones, this was like bringing a tank to a fist fight. Completely overkill. I loved it. With the smithy running on autopilot, I turned my attention back to the territory. And honestly, it was frustrating. Over 1,000 slaves working daily, and the construction still felt slow. But I had to admit, the problem was me. I'd drawn the territory boundaries way too big. Most frontier nobles start with a small town. I'd essentially planned a small city. My wall alone was 2 kilometers long and 5 meters tall, made of solid stone. Some established cities didn't have walls that impressive. The real bottleneck was labor quality. Goblins and kobolds could dig holes and carry dirt all day, but ask them to build an actual house. Their brains short-circuited. Their idea of architecture was, pile some stuff together and hope it doesn't fall. The big goblins and gnolls were stronger, but equally clueless about construction. They were muscles without blueprints. So we kept things simple. The houses were built with mud and reed walls. I know that sounds terrible, but hear me out. You mix clay with water into thick paste, stir in chopped reed stalks for reinforcement, then pack it between 2 wooden boards and compress it tight. The result is a wall over a foot thick that looks ugly as sin, but is incredibly warm. Northern winters? The ice wind from the Arctic wastes? This wall laughs at it. Add wooden support pillars inside, and the structure is surprisingly sturdy. Could I have used wood? Sure, trees were everywhere. But wooden buildings burn. One fire, and you lose an entire neighborhood. Plus, I was planning to sell lumber as my territory's first export product. Northern timber is special. The cold climate makes trees grow slowly, producing wood that's denser and harder than southern varieties. Perfect for furniture making and shipbuilding. Every log I used for a peasant hut was a log I couldn't sell for gold. The workflow was actually beautiful in its simplicity. Goblins and kobolds dug foundations. Turns out they're great at digging holes, probably because they live in holes. Big goblins and gnolls mixed clay and pounded it smooth. Human craftsmen supervised the wall building. Barbarians cut and hauled timber for the support frames. The gnolls and big goblins weren't happy about their new careers. Back in the wilderness, they were the ones bossing around goblins and kobolds. Now they were doing construction work under barbarian supervision, getting whipped if they slowed down. The indignity was written all over their ugly faces. But did they rebel? They'd watched me freeze 9 trolls into ice sculptures and burn 600 of their friends alive in a stone oven. The memory of that day was the most effective employee retention program in history. A couple barbarian overseers with whips was enough to keep 1,000 monsters in line. Agriculture was my next obsession. A territory without farming is a territory without a future. Period. Military strength means nothing if your soldiers starve. I'd surveyed both rivers extensively. The red sand and white water rivers had carved out broad, flat floodplains with some of the richest soil I'd ever seen. Within reasonable distance of my settlement, there was easily 100,000 acres of farmable land along those riverbanks. And because it was right next to the rivers, irrigation was a non-issue. The water table was right there. 100,000 acres. Fully cultivated, that could feed tens of thousands of people. My little territory was sitting on an agricultural gold mine. The farmland near the city walls was fine, but honestly inferior to the riverside plots. In theory, I could build water wheels and irrigation channels to bring river water to the inner fields. My new mechanical mastery skill made that totally possible. But channels cost money and labor, and I was broke. Simple solution: farm the riverside land first. The water's already there. Save the expensive infrastructure projects for when I'm not choosing between buy food and buy literally anything else. I stood on the hill overlooking my territory, the half-finished wall. The smoking smithy, the ugly mud houses slowly multiplying, the green rows of potato plants pushing through the soil, the fishing boats bobbing on the river, the gangs of goblins hauling dirt under barbarian supervision. Ugly? Absolutely. Disorganized? A little. Broke? Completely. But alive. Growing. And mine. Every log cut, every wall built, every potato planted was one step closer to a real city. A real kingdom. A place where the guy who showed up with nothing but a stolen noble title and a video game system in his head built something that lasted. 30 trees per barbarian per day. 1,000 slaves mixing mud. One overworked blacksmith forging an army's worth of steel. The empire wasn't pretty yet, but it was getting there. Let me explain something about goblins and farming. Goblins grow food. Their method? Find a field. Burn it. Throw seeds on the ground. Wait for rain. Hope for the best. That's it. That's their entire agricultural system. No plowing, no irrigation, no weeding. Just arson and optimism. Surprisingly, they're actually pretty good at the clearing land part. So I put them to work opening up new farmland. My goal: 5,000 acres cultivated before winter hits. That's the minimum to make the territory self-sufficient in food, because feeding my people was becoming a serious math problem. Let me break it down. 45 craftsmen slaves. 35 barbarian warriors, soon to be 124 when the families arrive. 40 mercenaries. Over 1,000 monster slaves. And every barbarian eats 3 times what a normal person does. These guys are basically biological furnaces that convert food into muscle and violence. I'd already decided to upgrade the barbarians to 3 meals a day instead of 2. You can't ask a man to fight trolls on an empty stomach. But 3 meals times 35 giant appetites times every single day? My food reserves were melting like ice cream in a sauna. Supplies that would have lasted months were now down to maybe 2 months. And here's the uncomfortable truth about my monster workforce. They will never become real citizens. I know that sounds harsh, but let me explain why. Barbarians? Fine. They're basically big humans. Dwarves? Sure, culturally different but civilized. But goblins, kobolds, and gnolls? These creatures eat people, not as a last resort, as a lifestyle choice. Gnolls don't just use goblins as cannon fodder in battle. They use them as emergency rations. Food runs low. Grab a goblin, problem solved. They eat their own allies, their own dead, sometimes their own living. You do not give citizenship to creatures that view their neighbors as both co-workers and lunch. So monsters stay as slaves. Period. The line between employee and atre needs to remain very clear. Anyway, I was north of the Red Sand River doing my regular patrol, hunting down stray goblins and kobolds. Even after wiping out every organized tribe within 20 kilometers, these things kept popping up like weeds. Little groups of 3 or 5 wandering the wilderness, and given a few months they'd clump together and form a new tribe. The cycle never ends. I also needed replacement workers. Construction was dangerous. No safety regulations, no hard hats, no insurance. Workers died. Not often, but regularly enough that I needed a steady supply of fresh labor. In my previous world, this would have been a massive scandal. Here, it was Tuesday. Boss, scouts found a goblin camp in the forest ahead. 200 to 300, including some big goblins, one of my barbarians reported. I pulled up my strategic map. There they were, a cluster of red dots about 5 kilometers northeast, right in a patch of forest. The map was getting more detailed every day. Everywhere I or my troops traveled, the fog of war lifted, revealing terrain, resources, and enemy positions. This map wasn't just useful inside my territory. It worked everywhere I went. Absolute game changer. I split the barbarians into 3 groups. 2 squads would circle around to cut off escape routes. I'd take 2 guys and hit the front door. Classic pincer move. Against goblins, this was less military strategy and more choosing which direction to point the lawnmower. 15 minutes later, I was standing outside the goblin camp. No guards, no walls, no lookouts, just a collection of sad little dirt mounds that served as houses, half underground, no windows, one entrance, held together by sticks and prayers. Technically called earth shelters, practically called holes in the ground with roofs. I checked the map. My flanking teams were in position. Green dots on both sides, ready to catch runners. Go time. I waved my hand and charged in with 2 barbarians. 3 people versus 300 goblins. Normally those odds would be insane. Against goblins? Overkill. A big goblin spotted us and started yelling, trying to rally his people into formation. Before he could finish his first sentence, a throwing hatchet split his forehead open like a coconut. Leadership eliminated. Total time, 2 seconds. My spear smashed through the camp perimeter fence like it was made of paper, which it basically was. Goblins scrambled out of their holes in a panic, blinking in the daylight, and ran straight into barbarian axes. 3 of us carved through that camp like a hot knife through a goblin-shaped block of butter. A handful of big goblins tried to make a stand. 4 or 5 of them lined up with crude weapons, forming what they probably thought was a brave last defense. I adjusted my angle, accelerated, and swept my spear through all of them in one swing. They went airborne. All of them, spinning through the air like ugly, green frisbees. Their leather armor burst open on impact, and they were dead before landing. Internal organs turned to paste from the sheer force. After that, every surviving goblin made a unanimous, democratic decision to run for their lives. They streamed out of the camp in every direction and ran directly into my waiting barbarian squads. The look on their faces, pure, undiluted despair. They'd run from 3 killers and found 10 more. Their little goblin hearts just gave up. They collapsed in a shaking pile of green bodies, hugging each other and trembling. Total combat time, maybe 5 minutes. Casualties on my side, 0. On their side, a few dozen dead, the rest captured. Standard procedure, I ordered. Kill the ones too weak to work. Tie up the rest and march them back to camp. Harsh? Yes. Necessary? Also yes. I couldn't feed mouths that produced nothing. Every goblin I kept alive had to earn its food through labor. The weak and elderly would only drain resources and slow down construction. Welcome to frontier economics. It's not pretty, but neither is starving to death in winter because you were too nice to make hard decisions. Another 200 workers added to the payroll. Another day in the empire-building business. I wiped my spear clean and headed back toward camp. The sun was getting low, dinner would be ready soon, and somewhere back at the smithy, Bruce was hammering out my barbarian's new armor. Just another Tuesday in the wilderness. The goblin raid was routine at this point. My barbarians could run a capture operation in their sleep. Tie up goblins, collect the pathetic loot. Spoiler, there was no loot. March prisoners back to camp. Another day, another 200 involuntary employees. I split the squad. Half escorted the goblin chain gang home. I took the rest to keep scouting northeast. The landscape was changing as we moved further out. The flat wilderness gave way to rolling hills, and on the horizon, a massive mountain range appeared, the Kandal Mountains. Hundreds of miles of peaks stretching across the land like the spine of a sleeping giant. The white water river that ran past my territory, it was born somewhere up in those mountains. Autumn was settling in, grass turning yellow, trees going bare, animals fattening up for winter. Prime hunting season. We found a hilltop with a good view and stopped for lunch. One of my barbarians tracked down an antelope in about 5 minutes. These guys were born hunters. Catching an antelope was like you or me ordering takeout, and soon we had it roasting over a fire. I was just about to take my first bite when a scout came sprinting back. Boss, 5 kilometers east, wild buffalo. A huge herd. I dropped my meat so fast it bounced off a barbarian's head. How many? The scout, being a barbarian who counted about as well as he spelled, stretched his arms out wide and made a big circle with his hands. Really big group, bigger than the goblin tribe we just hit. He took a massive bite of the meat I'd tossed him and chewed thoughtfully. Maybe half that size. They look like they're getting ready to migrate. Half of 300. About 150 wild buffalo. My brain immediately shifted into spreadsheet mode. 150 buffalo. Each one weighing over a ton. Each one capable of pulling a plow through soil that would break a human farmer's back. My territory needed 5,000 acres cultivated before winter. With goblin and kobold labor, that would take months. With 100 buffalo pulling plows? Days. And beyond farming, meat, leather, bone tools, milk, breeding stock. These weren't just animals. They were a mobile economic stimulus package with horns. Everyone eat faster. 10 minutes. Then we move. Barbarians don't need to be told twice to eat fast. They inhaled their food like living vacuum cleaners and were ready in 8 minutes. We jogged northeast and reached the scouts' position in 15 minutes. From a hilltop, I could see them, spread across the plain below, a sea of brown fur and curved horns, peacefully munching grass without a care in the world. I counted. At least 130. Maybe more. These weren't cute farm cows. Wild buffalo are monsters. 3 meters long, over a ton each, with curved horns sharp enough to gore a bear. And they're herd animals. When they stampede together, 100 charging buffalo has roughly the same destructive force as an imperial heavy cavalry charge. The ground literally shakes. Not a single one escapes, I announced. We're taking them all home. Now, here's where having barbarians paid off again. These guys used to raise buffalo back in their tribal days. Catching and taming wild cattle was literally their ancestral profession. They knew exactly what to do. The plan was simple. Surround the herd to prevent scattering. Then I'd personally take down the lead bull. Control the leader, control the herd. That's how buffalo psychology works. Finding the lead bull was easy. Biggest, strongest, meanest-looking animal in the group. A real unit. Over 3 meters long with horns like curved swords. I walked toward the herd. The buffalo noticed me immediately. Several bulls lowered their heads, pointed their horns at me, scraped the ground with their hooves, and bellowed warnings. Classic intimidation display. I kept walking. This apparently offended their bovine sensibilities. 3 angry bulls charged straight at me. A combined 3 tons of furious beef moving at full speed. I punched the first one in the forehead. Thud. Down. Unconscious. Like hitting the off switch on a furry truck. I had to be careful. Too much force and I'd kill it. Too little and a 1-ton bull would trample me. The sweet spot was knock out, don't murder. The second bull skidded to a stop, reconsidered his life choices, and received a fist to the skull before he could finish reconsidering. Night-night. The third one tried to turn and run. Too slow. Nap time. 3 unconscious bulls in about 5 seconds. The rest of the herd was getting very nervous. I sprinted toward the lead bull. He was not backing down. This guy was the king of this herd. He'd fought off wolves, bears, and rival bulls his entire life. Some 2-legged creature wasn't going to scare him. He charged at me with everything he had. Over a ton of muscle and fury thundering across the plain like a brown freight train. I punched him in the face. He staggered, wobbled, shook his massive head. Then, to his credit, he stood back up. Tough animal. Respect. Before he could recover, I jumped onto his back. What followed was the wildest rodeo in the history of 2 worlds. This bull went insane. Bucking, spinning, jumping, twisting, every trick in the bovine playbook deployed at maximum intensity. He wanted me OFF. He wanted me dead. He wanted to launch me into orbit. I held on with my legs and rode him like a surfboard in a hurricane. My stats made me nearly impossible to throw. Strength 26, Constitution 28, Agility 28. This bull could have bucked for a week and I'd still be sitting on top, sipping imaginary tea. Eventually, after what felt like 10 minutes of the world's angriest amusement park ride, the bull ran out of gas. His jumps got weaker. His spins got slower. Finally, he just stopped. Head down, breathing hard. The universal animal language for, okay, you win. I patted his head. Good boy. The lead bull let out a low, defeated moo toward the herd. Whatever he said in buffalo language, it translated to, stand down. Boys, this one's in charge now. The entire herd calmed down instantly. 130 buffalo, suddenly docile, looking at me with those big dumb eyes like, so, are we going somewhere? Yes. Yes, we are. You're all coming home with me to become the agricultural backbone of my territorial economy. I rode the lead bull at the front of the herd like some kind of barbarian cowboy, my warriors flanking both sides, and we thundered across the plains toward the settlement. 130 buffalo running together shook the earth with every step. Dust clouds rose behind us. The ground trembled. I've led cavalry charges. I've commanded barbarian warriors. I've slaughtered armies. But riding a wild bull at the head of a buffalo stampede, racing across an autumn wilderness toward a territory I built from nothing, that might have been the single coolest moment of my life. Eat your heart out, cowboys. I brought the buffalo home like a conquering hero returning with treasure. Except my treasure weighed over 100 tons combined and occasionally tried to headbutt people. Now, some of you might be thinking, why not use horses instead? Horses are faster and plow more land. Great question. Here's my answer. I'm broke. A military horse costs 30 to 50 gold nars. I have 200 gold to my name. I can't even afford one horse, let alone enough to plow 5,000 acres. And horses are divas. They need premium feed, midnight snacks, special care, and they injure easily. A single war horse eats 10 gold worth of food per year. A regular work horse still costs 3 gold annually. That's more than half what a commoner earns in a year. These animals eat better than most humans in this kingdom. Cows. Cows eat grass. Cows eat weeds. Cows eat whatever's growing on the ground and don't complain. When a horse dies, you get one horse skin. When a cow gets old, you get meat, leather, and you can make bows from the horns. The economics aren't even close. The wild buffalo were aggressive and temperamental, sure. A normal farmer would get launched into orbit trying to control one. But I had barbarians, people who'd been catching and raising buffalo since before they could walk. Taming wild cattle was literally their cultural heritage. And for the really stubborn ones, I had the ultimate cheat code, nose rings. A buffalo's nose is incredibly sensitive. Thread a metal ring through those nostrils, and the angriest, most psychotic one-ton murder cow becomes a gentle, obedient puppy. How do you hold down a raging bull long enough to pierce its nose? Easy. 2 barbarian warriors just pin it to the ground. Problem solved with brute force, as nature intended. Final count, 97 adults, 42 bulls and 55 cows, plus 21 calves. I assigned the barbarian women and children to handle the cattle. Those ladies could wrestle a buffalo into submission while nursing a baby. They were perfect for the job. 1 month. I'd been in the wilderness for exactly 1 month, and the changes were staggering. The port on the Red Sand River had grown from 3 janky fishing boats to 7, with 5 times more dock space. We could now handle actual cargo ships. Not that any had arrived yet, but hey, build it and they will come. Downstream from the port, for massive water wheels lined the riverbank like wooden sentinels. 2 powered forging hammers. 1 ran the bellows. The 4th was in or crusher, sitting idle for now since we hadn't found our iron mine yet, but ready to go the moment we did. The city walls, completely converted to stone. Every inch, 5 meters tall, 1 meter thick, encircling the entire settlement. Were they as impressive as Cult City's walls? Not even close. But against goblins, kobolds, and gnolls? Absolute overkill. The territory's safety rating jumped by 50 points overnight. But what I was most proud of, the roads. Oh, the roads. I'd built proper roads, real roads, connecting the city center to the logging camp, the port, and the farmland. First, we leveled the dirt and packed it tight. Then we soaked it with water. Then we collected thousands of smooth river stones from the riverbank, goblins and kobolds hauling them in baskets, 1 load at a time, and pressed them into the wet earth. Finally, we rolled everything flat with a heavy stone roller. The result? Hard, smooth roads that didn't turn to mud when it rained and didn't kick up dust when it was dry. Better than the streets in Cult City. Better than the streets in Collin City. Better than most roads in the entire Florence Kingdom, honestly. On both sides of every road, drainage ditches. 1 meter wide, half a meter deep. Connected throughout the entire settlement to funnel all wastewater out of the city. No puddles. No sewage. No mystery fluids pooling in the streets. My territory would not smell like a medieval toilet. I had lived through that once. Never again. The city layout was a grid. Clean, organized, symmetrical. Streets crossed at right angles. Plots were measured and divided. Residential here, commercial there. At regular intervals along each street, I designated spots for public toilets. Actual designated sanitation facilities. In a world where most people just dump their chamber pot out the window and pray, I was building restrooms. If this territory grew into a real city, it would be the cleanest urban center on the continent. By a mile. Outside the walls, Over 500 goblin and kobold slaves were breaking ground on new farmland under mercenary supervision. And the overseers cracking the whips? Not humans. Other goblins and kobolds. That's right, my slave management system had evolved beautifully. After a few weeks of captivity, the smarter, more ambitious goblins figured out the game. They volunteered as overseers, learned basic human commands, and started bossing around their own kind with terrifying enthusiasm. A human guard would give a lazy goblin 1 lash. A goblin overseer would give it 5 lashes and a lecture in goblin language about what happens to goblins who make the overseer look bad. The best part? My system actually recognized these monster managers as a legitimate unit type, goblin overseer. Increases goblin work efficiency by 20%. Reduces slave unrest by 10%. Originally just another goblin, this individual chose to serve Su Luan in exchange for better food. Possessing natural language talent, it has learned basic human speech and can communicate with human supervisors. Its intimate knowledge of goblin behavior makes it an exceptionally effective taskmaster. I had goblin middle management, kobold supervisors, even a few null foremen. Every trader who switched sides freed up a human or barbarian for more important work. My labor shortage was solving itself through the ancient power of workplace ambition and slightly better lunch options. Was the system exploitative? Absolutely. Was it effective? Spectacularly. These goblin overseers would never slack off, because if I demoted them back to regular slave status, their former subordinates, the goblins they'd been whipping for weeks, would welcome them back with extreme prejudice. The fear of demotion was the greatest motivator I'd ever invented. Standing on the hill next to my half-finished castle, I surveyed everything. Stone walls gleaming in the autumn sun, paved roads stretching in neat lines, water wheels spinning by the river, fishing boats bobbing at the dock, buffalo being led to freshly plowed fields, smoke rising from the smithy, and everywhere, the sound of construction. 1 month ago, this was empty wilderness. Now it was a settlement with infrastructure that would make city planners from my previous world nod in grudging approval. Clean water access, proper drainage, paved roads, organized zoning, public sanitation. The bar was low in this medieval world, and I was leaping over it with rocket boots. Was I still broke? Yes. Was the castle still unfinished? Absolutely. Were there 1,000 monsters living inside my walls who would eat me if they got the chance? Probably. But we had buffalo now. And where there are buffalo, there is hope. Also steak. Eventually.